Everyone, I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Brawley City Council, successor agency to Brawley Community Redevelopment Agency. Regular meeting agenda for Tuesday, July 17th at 6 p.m. If we can have the roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamby.
Here.
Councilmember Catherine Howdigi.
Here.
Mayor Nava.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton.
Here. And Councilmember Couchman is not feeling well today, so he will not be making the meeting here today, so I hope he feels better soon. All right, next item on the agenda is the invocation. We can please rise for our invocation. God bless our country, God bless our community. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all. And Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Kastner Howdy.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Councilmember Kastner Howdy. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. There is an item that needs to be changed on the consent, and I'll make that note. We are removing the minutes, the approval of the minutes for June 5th and June 19th. They're not in the backup material, and we're adding April 23rd, 2018 to the minutes that need to be approved in consent. So I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written with the exception of the changes that I mentioned. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, there's a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Mayor, I was
Yes.
gonna, during the discussion part of that, I was gonna ask to have item 6A listed under city council reports to be moved to regular business as item 4I.
6A?
Yes. It's a presentation I want to give on a proof of concept at Hinojosa Park.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
So I'll change my motion to include the change from city council member reports, 6A, to include it in regular business as 4I. Would you concur with that?
Yes, I'll second that.
All right, thank you. And so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next item is public appearances and comments not to exceed 4 minutes. This is a time for the public to address the council on any item not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Please direct your questions and comments to the city council. Is there anyone here who would like to make a public comment or has any item or comment that they would like to share with the city council that's not on the agenda today? Marge.
Good evening, Marjo Mello, Library Director and Interim Parks and Rec Director in our new Parks and Rec shirt.
All right,
Which got noticed at the library today.
right. Is that the Hulk? Is that
Actually, it's
Let's
Wreck-It
see.
Ralph.
Wreck-It Ralph? Okay,
Yes.
all right,
Okay.
fantastic.
And it says, "There's no one I'd rather be than me,"
All right,
which is true.
I say
I
that
don't
every
think
morning.
anybody else could be me either. Okay.
I wake up and say the same thing.
I just would like to say that if people would like to come to the swimming pool on Friday from 10 to noon, that's where the library story time is going to be held. So that's why I get to wear all kinds of hats that day and for this announcement. And we're really excited about it. So we
Fantastic.
just wanted to put that out there for a free swim and an otter pop. And the otter pop holders will not go into the pool filter.
Okay,
We've had that discussion. So, but please come because it's free swim.
fantastic. Thank you very much.
This
welcome.
Friday, Marge?
This Friday.
Friday from 10 to noon, free swim at the pool, otter pops, and the otter pop wrapper will not go into the filters. All right, we got it. Thank you. Anybody else who would like to make a comment? Seeing none. We'll move on to item 2A, introduction of building inspector David Trevino by Development Services Director Gordon Geist.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor, council members, Gordon Gase, Development Services Director. I'm here to introduce our new inspector. He has 14 years' experience with the city of Calexico, and he has a specialty in rehab, housing rehab, which we do continuously with our home grants and our other CDBG funds. We're happy to have him here so that we have a little more time to schedule our inspections to do the proper type of service that we need. If you have any questions for him, David Trevino is here, and
Well, David, come on up.
Thank you.
How are
Thank
you?
you for the opportunity and for welcoming me to the city of Brawley.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to the city of Brawley. Let's give him a big round of
Yeah,
applause.
congratulations.
So, welcome to Brawley. We know you're going to work very hard and do well. You bring a lot of years of experience, so we look forward to seeing that as our city develops with different projects. So thank you again. And any comments from the city council?
And he resides in Brawley.
And he
All right.
resides in Brawley, even better.
Very
There you
good.
go.
Well,
All
that's-
right.
see, that
Even
in
better.
itself is a
Even
plus.
better. Fantastic. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next item is consent agenda. Items are approved by one motion. Council members or members of the public may request consent items be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the corrections that were made earlier?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I would like to request, I don't know if we need to move this to regular business, but the city council minutes that we've just received today, I would like to postpone approving those until the next meeting, just so that everyone has a chance to look over those.
Okay, so the request is to postpone approving city council minutes. All right. We'll table that item. You want to approve the accounts payable register and item A and C then? Councilmember
Yes,
Kestner-Howdy?
that's fine. I'll approve
And-
A
and-
and C, and we'll postpone item B. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, could
Go ahead.
just as a matter of record, I want to make a comment on that, just for clarification for the public. So these minutes, as they are recorded and published, within the 96-hour window, so we have ample time to review, I believe. So as to if you have questions, you can also inquire with staff. So if you need more time, understandable, I'm just saying. Also, it's why we go to the expense of recording our meetings too, so that those minutes are about as accurately recorded as possible. So there's not even, human error. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, I don't need additional time. I mean, if that's a request. Do you?
Well, I mean, I don't have an objection. I do know that I did have time to review them, but I think we just received them, so I can understand, the request.
Video's been there
I don't have a
for
problem with that.
several weeks. Okay.
Postponing.
So there's a motion to approve the consent agenda with items A and C and moving item B to a future date for approval. Is there a second? Was there a second? I'm sorry.
I'll second it.
There's a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Know, one final comment. With respect to the minutes, we did receive them. The video's there. Please review the material. I know Councilmember Wharton has and others have as well.
Sure,
So-
it's more for public access, for transparency. I just want to make sure anyone who's interested in the public who wants to look at the minutes has the opportunity to do that and compare them to the video.
Sure.
That's all
And-
that's about.
And it's all accessible, so.
And has been for
Yeah.
years.
All right. So going on to regular business, 4A, discussion potential action to adopt Brawley City Council Resolution Number 2018, resolution of the City Council of the City of Brawley, California, in support of the memorandum of understanding between the County of Imperial and the County of Riverside on the Salton Sea. There's backup material on pages 50 and 51, and I think this item is going to be presented by former mayor of the City of Brawley and current supervisor, District 4, Mr. Ryan Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council Member, City Manager, City Attorney, City Clerk, City Treasurer, if you're here.
That's me too.
Oh,
Yeah? Yeah?
gonna add to your placard there.
Yeah.
The reason this is before you is we, about 4 weeks ago, jointly on the same day, approved a memorandum of understanding on the Salton Sea. That it took into account the perimeter lake concept, that was promoted by the Salton Sea Authority in 2015, the financial feasibility study that produced the perimeter lake concept, and also a further dialogue on creating an infrastructure finance district around the sea. Now, there are some things that need to be clarified so that you understand that this is not to take any of the obligation from the state of California. No one from Imperial County is being asked to pay for a perimeter lake. The perimeter lake concept is what would be locally supported, knowing what resources are available, and putting water back into the marinas, cays, and keys along the Salton Sea, stabilizing the shoreline and allowing a Salton sink to move and fluctuate on the interior. There'd also be air mitigation along the banks of an earthen berm that supports the perimeter lake, but also controls the emissive ground on that berm and on the interior. So it does not conflict with the known geothermal resource area, and it does not conflict with the backbone promoted by the Imperial Irrigation District. All those were in consideration when this plan was developed. At its build-out, you would be able to drop a boat in at Poe Road out by Westmoreland and be able to cruise from Poe Road all the way to Bombay Beach. There will be two larger features, one in the south end, a South Lake, and one in the north end of North Lake. And it is important to note that the South Lake is much bigger than the North Lake. That means Imperial County's lake is much bigger than Riverside's. The discussion about the infrastructure finance district, there are two options for the county and Riverside to explore. They are independent, and there will be no commingling of funds between the two agencies. If a infrastructure finance district is created, it will have representation beyond the Board of Supervisors to represent districts and jurisdictions that are within. The IFD can be done as an infrastructure finance district by legislation that was passed, I believe, in 1996 by Senator Dave Kelly, that allowed the Salton Sea to be formed into an IFD, but was never executed. Subsequent to that, in the last 3 years, beginning with, I believe, when in his first year, or Assemblymember Garcia, or it might have been the last year of Assemblymember Perez's term, an enhanced infrastructure finance district option was made available to areas along in the state of California. In either option, the representation would have to be a mix, not just of the county. But the tax increment is the change in value of any of the land that we would classify around there. So if it's a 3-mile barrier from the shoreline, or if it's 5 miles, we would have to get the owner's permission to join into that. And any monies that are created, it would be a differential between the property value it is today and the increase in valuation. There's no new tax that's assigned to any property. That increment would be put towards improvements in the areas where roads, water lines, sewer lines, power lines, infrastructure to promote more development at the Salton Sea. Whereas Riverside has the ability to see residential and commercial development along the sea much quicker than Imperial County. Imperial County is looking at trying to see more energy development occur on the South Sea. And part of this MOU also incorporates that Riverside will begin to lobby in our support for geothermal carve-out or recognition in the RPS or any expansion of the RPS. So there is another action that we've asked for in the near future that the City Council would take up, and that's support of Assembly Bill 893, which is a carve-out for, carve-out's a bad term, but geothermal development in California. Where can it happen? It can happen in Imperial County, so
Right.
it's carve out. But we see that as a very important piece. We've been fighting for it for 4 years, and with all the conversation about SB 100 and moving the renewable portfolio to 100% this year, establishing it for 2030, this is probably the best time to be able to have that argument. We need to have the city of Brawley, Calipatria, El Centro, all of us need to send letters in support of this, as it makes a significant impact on the property tax revenues, job creation, and the ancillary benefits of mineral extraction and new industry in Imperial County. So I'm here to answer any questions you have about the perimeter lake or why Imperial County went into an MOU with Riverside in regards to this, and I'm open to your questions.
Well, thank you first and foremost for coming before us and presenting the information. I know you made the request to support the county's decision and with respect to supporting a resolution here tonight. So, does anybody have any questions on the city council with respect to the request?
I just, for clarification, because I know we'll probably get questions regarding the taxes, property taxes. Is there going to be any impact on the property taxes for the residents of the city of Brawley?
No. And so as currently, and unfortunately, I express regrets that Rebecca was not able to be here. She also wanted to make part of the presentation. We are still in a design on what would the inclusion area be for an infrastructure finance district. As we see it mapped out, it does not approach Brawley. It does not have to be contiguous, so it can be added and areas can be, it can come into Brawley, or it can come out to the east or west of Brawley and not be adjacent to the Salton Sea. But as we are focusing on something that we've never done before, we're trying to do it in an area that we know we have a need. And it does incorporate an island, and it does come to the periphery of Calipatria and Westmoreland. But those are only in preliminary. We're asking SCAG, who's been assigned to do a follow-up feasibility on the IFD to see where we would have our financing and how soon we'd be able to bond out and make some improvements in the area. And so we're kind of finalizing that. It will come to the board on what areas we would like SCAG to focus on for inclusion in the IFD. And once that report comes back, then we would proceed farther in going through the process of establishing. One of the things that we have to do in the establishment is the board will have to decide that they want to go forward in establishing the IFD. When that happens, then we will have to have a vote of the landowners that are inside the IFD. And if they choose to participate, then it comes back to the board to establish it, and that creates the baseline, and that increment, and it's only for 30 years, would continue to go in reinvestment into that area. So there is no new tax, even if you are in the IFD. It is that share of increased value, and if it did not go to the IFD, it would go to the county general fund. So it's the same monies, it's just saying this amount would be applied towards improvements in this area, similar to the redevelopment agency in the city of Brawley.
Okay, thank you. One more question, taking advantage. Thank you, Supervisor Kelly. What about, does this help facilitate, just out of curiosity, because good information here, some of the recent bills that have been passed, the legislative support, that funding, is that in any way connected with the establishment of an IFD, or is that independent of? Because I know
it's independent, Mr. Wharton, in respect that we will not be paying for the long-term solution. We have to be united in saying, you're not going to put that on the back of our ratepayers or our taxpayers. But the improvements around the periphery and the networks of support and infrastructure development, that's what we will take on. But yes, the money that, from the park bond that just passed, and also the 80.5 million that was in the budget from 2 years ago, and subsequent monies, maybe in the fall, if the water bond passes, that we would see maybe a total of $480 million available for Salton Sea restoration. That's a portion, and a price tag associated with the perimeter lake right now is $1.2 billion. Where we see this is there's been a lot of discussion about sea to sea and the importation of water from the Pacific Ocean and from the Sea of Cortez. Those are outside our span of control, and we do not have the financing or the leverage to change or make the political will in a foreign nation or in another county and coastal commission to import water. So if there was a way of making a water transfer that was economical and that benefited the Salton Sea, the perimeter lake is not in conflict with that.
Mm-hmm.
You can import that water, introduce it into the sea, and breach the perimeter barrier and create a new lake that is at the same negative 230 elevation that we want it to be at. But we know that we have a defined resource. We know that the inflow is going to be between 700 and 750,000 acre feet. That was supplied by Imperial Irrigation District. We know that the perimeter lake will require 300,000 acre feet. So we want to be able to have a minor salinity of 15 parts per thousand.
Mm-hmm.
And that would keep bacteria growth and algae growth from happening. But it would also be recreational water so that we could have skiing and boating and fishing back on the Salton Sea.
For-
And it would
for
be a
portion.
destination port.
Yeah. A portion of it, right?
Mhm.
And you did provide, the map is up there, the perimeter concept, so. And it's still relevant today. I know this is an older draft, but it's still the same information, right?
Yeah, and you know, there's still more fine tuning that needs to be done. But the raceway that connects the south to the north, at points it's 300 yards, 200 yards, but 15 feet in depth so that boats can move
Yeah,
through.
boats can move through 'em. Mhm.
And maybe as you build the cells of each one of the portions of the perimeter lake, maybe we put locks in, and you're able to move and conveyance that way, and we have a crossing to get to the interior. It's still, there's more fine tuning that needs to be developed on it, but it's putting forward something that we can agree on. And we're asking the members of the Torres Martinez Indian tribe, the Imperial Irrigation District, and the Coachella Valley Water Authority also to sign on to this and to present this with the city of Brawley and Calipatria, Holtville, and El Centro to say, this is where we live. This is something that has a benefit to us. And if you've been following the news, the state is going through their third round of hearing projects about importing water. That will continue to happen. They will continue to hear projects that they cannot pay for. And they will delay the inevitable. They have 5 years from the amended water order to be able to make a final or a long-term solution available. And if we allow them to work that clock, there will be 10 years from now of a 10-year management program without a solution. And so we are not allowing them to continue to move that along in the same path that they did with the mitigation waters.
And a question with respect to Riverside County, I mean, they're a much larger county by far, so they imagine have more political muscle and more of a voice there. So in your opinion, if we support this, it's just a concept, if we support the concept, it just, in working with Riverside County, it's just gonna be a stronger voice out in Sacramento to make this happen, is that?
Right.
Probably.
And Riverside County is doing similar efforts in trying to get the Coachella Valley cities to also support the MOU so that we can show local preference for a plan that we can manage and move forward. Imperial County and Riverside County have land use authority. There is a joint project that you may be aware of that's on the West Shores called Traventine. It's basically a new city that has been permitted in both counties. Much smaller scale on the Imperial County side. We get a golf course and 300 homes. I think they get like 2,600 homes in a commercial development. But regardless, that's part of. We also have Salton City, Desert Shores, Salton Sea Beach, and Vista Del Mar, where there's 25,000 entitled lots that have not been developed. So there's the opportunity, if we put water back into that space, that all that will start to be developed.
Very well. And it addresses the concerns that people in Imperial County have, you know, so the receding water line and those things, so very well. Sir, another question for you, Supervisor Kelly. With respect to local support, has there been any local opposition to this proposal?
No. When we had the conversation at the board meeting, two of the board members expressed some interest on having the conversation delayed so that they could get some questions answered. Subsequently, one of them did vote in favor of the MOU. The other still wanted more information. I've talked to that supervisor. He does understand the concept. He was only wanting to get some further information about the infrastructure financing district, which is not something that we need to focus on in regards, because it is something not attached to what we want to present to the state and to the federal government.
This is
It's
just a
not a
concept.
solution for
Right.
them. Yeah.
Right, this is just the concept. You're asking for support of the
And
concept. I
the
understand.
perimeter lake is in the 10-year management program that the state has adopted. It
Okay.
is referenced in there, and by showing local support, we can drive that to be where they're going to focus their energies. I'd like to see people that are funded through the park bond and through the governor's budget from 2 years ago. I'd like to see them in Imperial County. I'd like to see them working in engineering and doing the studies in Imperial County.
That's true.
Last year, when there was the problem with the Oroville Dam, the Water Resources Department was, those attached to Salton Sea were redirected, a whole group of them. And some of the projects are suffering because of that reallocation of resources.
Very well. Any other
Okay.
questions from council?
Well, since you mentioned the 80+ million that we've been hearing about that for about 2 years now, so that's still up there at the state level. None of that money has been allocated for or spent at this point.
So about $23 million was allocated for overhead for staff to work on the Salton Sea.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the item? I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and the second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate the
Thank you.
information. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion and potential action. It's 4B, discussion potential action to approve the Brawley Chamber of Commerce's request on behalf of the Catacall Queen Royalty Association to sell and consume alcohol at the Line Center on October 13th, 2018, from 5:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. Backup materials on pages 52 and 50 through 56. And Marjo Mello is going to be presenting.
Yes, I am. Again, interim Parks and Rec Director. First off, I'd like to compliment Dana Mendoza for all the work she has personally done and professionally done to revive this program, start up another new organization, and has at least, is it 13? Has at least 13 young people interested in becoming part of the Cattle Queen Court, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is.
It is. So that's how I want to start. And with the great support of Katie and the Chamber, they're looking at a venue to have their coronation. And one of the the place that they're interested in having this at is at the Lions Center. And as part of having this at the Lions Center, they're interested in having alcohol available. And over the years, the Lions Center has not been a place where alcohol has been served. Over the years, it's been felt that it was a youth-centered area with a high school nearby, a preschool nearby, all the fields, et cetera. The one exception that was made was actually for the Cattle Call Queen coronation, and it was in 2011. Is the one exception in the last 30 years that staff could find any information about alcohol being served at the Lions Center. So you have a pretty hard decision to make here about going with tradition. Although there's two huge traditions going on here. One is the Lions Center and one is, of course, the coronation. So I would just like to say that just about everybody I've spoken to about this is thrilled to have this activity come back. And actually, I don't think it ever really went away, but it was almost gone away. So that was cool. And I'm quite sure Dana and even Katie may have something they wanted to say.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Certainly, if there's any representation from the Cattle Call Queen Royalty Association.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Katie Luna with the Brawley Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to take a moment to give you a little background, as you may already know, but a refresher. About a year and a half ago, the Brawley Chamber Board recognized that the Queen contest was more than just a contest, but it was actually an avenue for teaching young ladies how to participate in not only horsemanship, but how to have certain conduct that goes along with the contest in regards to how they conduct themselves out in the public. So it's a great learning opportunity. It is a contest that is a platform for receiving a title that will allow them to go on to competitions such as at the state level. So it is a big deal. It's a sport, essentially. So with that recognition, the board decided that we would transition the contest from just being a contest to its own association, where all the past queens could come and be a part of the association, and they can look at how to grow the organization into more than just a once-a-year contest. So we're very happy. I'm very happy tonight to present Dana Mendoza, who is the current president of the association, and I'm going to give her an opportunity to speak with you this evening.
Good evening.
Who are you?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all. I know that everyone has mixed emotions about alcohol at different events. The one thing that I do want to tell you about this event is that I have, without dating myself, I've been involved for about 25 years. And and I feel like it's just, it's a dinner, it's a dance, it's a lot of things. It's not necessarily just going to go and sit and drink and do whatever. They're watching their daughters blossom on stage. They're watching, 10 weeks of hardcore work becoming starting out this little diamond in the rough. And to me, the alcohol permit is something that we need to have, but not letting behind. The most important thing is watching. I have 13 applications. We haven't had more than 5 in probably about 10 years. It's amazing. And
It's true.
and the most important part to us, as this is our first year, is we want to keep it in Brawley. And we're looking at 250, 300 people. And that's the only place in Brawley in October
That'll
that's
host.
going to allow us to do that comfortably.
Sure.
So with that being said, I hope that, you will seriously consider, the whole picture. We don't want to take it to Hopeville or El Centro. We've struggled with that in the past. It's Brawley. It needs to kind of stay in Brawley. And I hope that you can work with us and get this done.
Well, thank you, Ms. Mendoza, for the presentation, for the information.
I just want want to make one more note that the chamber did commit to assisting the association with the establishment of the association until they're fully equipped to run on their own. So this year, as part of the collaboration, we are assisting them with with filing the permits, being that we have our nonprofit status, as well as assisting them with the ABC license. So that's the nature of the relationship.
Thank you. No, and it is here on the regular business. It's approval for the Brawley Chamber of Commerce's request on behalf of. So, thank you. I'll just open it up for discussion. Anybody on council has an opinion or a comment they'd like to share? Anyone?
Want me to-
You can start, go ahead, Don.
I'll lead that, okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, and I have no clue again what the general sentiment would be, but my personal feeling was pretty much like you said. I had some issue with the fact that it is a location that it is, and the nature of the location, the history of it. I understand there is an exception, but I also know, Ms. Mendoza, the heart and soul and the time that's been put into this, and I don't think there's a council member up here that doesn't want to see the success of the coronation and certainly keeping it in here. You touched on one thing. You said you looked at all the other locations during that time. So everything within the Brawley city limits has been eliminated as a potential? Because I know in the past that coronations occurred at different locations, correct?
Yes, correct. They did have it down at the arena, in the grassy area where the vendors would be set up for the rodeo.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, October is unpredictable, and I have attended several of those years, and one year we about passed out from heat exhaustion, and the other year it was so windy, everybody was holding stuff down.
Right.
So
Understood.
it's not that there isn't another option in Brawley, it's just simply that ideally the Lion Center is the best building, it's the best controlled facility.
Well, it's got air conditioning,
Yes.
Yeah.
restroom facilities.
stage.
Yes.
It's got a stage.
Yes.
If you have 13 contestants, you can imagine the number of family members that are going to
Yes.
be there. It's got the chairs, tables, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
I have no objection. I mean, I know it's, it's during catacall, and, I don't think we've really had any issues with alcohol consumption on Main Street and other events that are really family-oriented, so I have no objection. Any other?
Well, personally, I'd love to be able to retain this event in the city of Brawley. I mean, it's just one of those things that we're known for, and I think making the exception for this is appropriate. So I would support making the exception for this one-time event.
I'm sure I'm obviously in the minority on this, but I truly do appreciate the fact that this is being resurrected and even expanded from what it has been in the past. I have concerns about setting a precedent in the Lion Center for alcohol consumption, and I know that we have a lot of traditions within Brawley, and there are certainly some of them I think have value, and we have overlap here between a tradition of the Cattle Call Queen and the contest there, and the fact that there are a lot of people that like to drink alcohol at these types of events, but we also have the tradition of not having alcohol consumption in the Lion Center, and if it's a choice of having it there or not having it in Brawley at all, I don't like that that's the ultimatum, but as I said, I'm in the minority on this, but I love the idea of having it here, and I truly do appreciate what both the Chamber and the Cattle Call Queen Association is trying to do here, but, and you know my record anyway on this kind of stuff, so.
All right, so there's no other questions. Is there a motion to approve the item?
Mr. Mayor, I didn't finish
I'm
my
sorry.
thought. The
Go
only thing I
ahead.
did want to say, so hence,
Sorry about that.
yeah, and I didn't want it, necessarily shaped as I started off. I did say, no problem, Mr. Mayor, I'm not talking
I'm
about.
sorry
As I
about
started
that.
off, though, I did say, I do not know what my fellow councilman, now I do. But I think with the work and the resurrection, again, as has been said of this, is that I would want to make it perfectly clear that I think this year could be an exception. I think the precedent, unfortunately or fortunately, was set back in 2010, I think it was. that's why I wanted to kind of ask you the question of what are the options? But my hope would be moving forward, because I assume this to be successful, that we start immediately at looking at something else. And I know some of this is cost. If you did have an outdoor venue, if you could put up a tent and control the temperature somewhat, I get all that. So, but my hope is that we can move forward, and I would still like to maintain that the tradition of not having these at per se at the teen center, Lion Center, pool. So, but this time I'm prepared to move forward and see what we can do.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the item?
So moved.
There's a motion. I'll second the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you. Good luck. Behave yourselves, right? Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Next item on the agenda is item 4C, and I'll try to go through these rather quickly. I don't want to hold up the process too long. All right. Good luck, and thank you again. 4C, discussion potential action to approve resolution number 2018, resolution of the City Council, City of Brawley, California, appointing members to the Brawley Airport Advisory Commission with terms ending June 30th, 2020. Backup materials and applications are on pages 57 through 60. I think we have 3 interested and 3 seeking reappointment. I make a motion to approve the reappointments. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, discussion potential action. This is item D. Discussion of potential action to approve resolution number 2018. Resolution of the Council of the City of Brawley, California, appointing members to the Brawley Library Board of Trustees with terms ending June 30th, 2021. Pages 61, 68 are applications and backup material. I believe there's, there are 3 openings, and there are 3 seeking reappointment. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
3
there's
new
more.
applicants.
Isn't there?
And 3 new.
Yeah.
Certainly, but I'm just talking about the reappointments at this point.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
Are the reappointments? Yes.
Yeah,
And then there's new applicants, right?
yeah. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 applicants
3 openings.
and 3 openings, and we'll just go through them rather quickly. There are those who are looking for reappointment and those who are interested in serving for the first time. I'll give each person an opportunity to speak up if they'd like to share their comments, just for our consideration, and then we can go in and vote on the matter. So if any of the we'll start, in fact, we'll start with the first application here, and that's Ms. Judy Grant. If you'd like to share any comments, just keep them very brief, please, and we'll go from there.
Are you implying I talk too
No,
much?
no, not at all, certainly not. Just for the sake of time.
I'm Judy Grant. Most of you know who I am, and I have been on I'm not real sure how long I've been on the library board, but I feel like I would like to continue for at least one more 3-year time span. There's some things we have in the works that I would like to be a part of to help grow the library in our community.
Thank you very much.
Was that good?
Thank you.
I'm kind of-
Miss Elizabeth Hamby? Is she here? No, she's not. Is Diana Lohr?
Diana Lohr had a doctor's appointment in San Diego and didn't think she'd make it back in time, but she wanted to, her request to be considered again. She is very devoted to the library. I don't know if it's any help, but she's the one who makes the angel cookies for the angel tea.
She's the
That
one that
does it.
treats us, huh?
Yes.
Gives the treat.
Angel cookies.
That shouldn't influence it, but
Right.
I just wanted to do that, no.
Okay.
She's also well-versed in nonfiction and does a lot of help with the selection at the library for those things. And she would very much be interested in continuing another 3 years.
Thank you very much. Next is Miss Marilyn Miller.
don't think I can compete with Angel Cookies. That's just a real tough act to follow, you guys. But anyway, I would just like to think that I've been honored just to be asked to be nominated here. And I love our library. I use our library, and I love the city of Brawley. And I've been here most of my life. And but I don't want to put anyone else out that's been doing an amazing job. But anyway, I just want to thank you again, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller, and we appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Dixie Smith. Miss, that's fine. That's
Hi.
fine.
Yes, I've been with the library board for a very long time, and I thought about it. I talked to Marjo, said maybe it is time for someone else. I love what I do, though, and I think I bring a lot to the meetings and the information that I've had from past people. So I really would like to continue for another 3 years in the position that I have. I just, like I say, I'm like her. I love the library. It's a wonderful place. And we have great people on the staff right now and great people on the board as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Ms. Robin White.
Hi, I am Robin Waddy. I'm a resident of Brawley, and I do want to be on the council for the library. As a younger mind, I think I have some ideas that could be implemented well. I've been on a couple of different boards. I'm only 23, so hoorah. I do like nonfiction as well. I can bake lots of cookies. He knows. I bake him cookies every time he comes over, but I love reading. My husband and I have a giant library. It's kind of funny. And his grandmother is actually a prominent influencer in the Calapat Library, so I think that I could be a good force of nature for the Brawley Library. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your application. All right, so those are the applicants. With respect to reappointment, is there any interest in reappointing on behalf of City Council any of the applicants here?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to actually begin with a comment. First
Sure.
and foremost, very excited to see the interest and the applications.
Absolutely.
So all the applicants, certainly not just the library, as we move on, and we're going to talk about one of our other Parks and Rec Commission. But so just, I want to express our sincere gratitude for that, having that civic focus and wanting to bring that to Brawley. I've had the pleasure, as we're talking about the library, of serving a while also as a delegate representing the city with the library board. So I've worked with these incredible individuals. And what I would like to see, it sounded like from just the comments that this, I don't know if it's the last hurrah or the last term or whatever the case may be, maybe a no there. We're not going to let them go. But I think one of the strengths of our city, it's no question undisputed, has been the library, obviously headed with Marjo and this great board. So I just want to express again my gratitude to all of the applicants. But with that, I'll be prepared to support, if we can, at least one more time here, the current slate of incumbents.
Sure. And thank you for sharing those comments with respect to the work that's been done by the current library board. I really do appreciate it. I know everybody else in the city of Brawley does as well. It's also really nice to see that there's greater activity, whether that's through the library board, Parks and Rec, or even the Catacall Queen recruitment efforts. So that's great to see. I'm happy to see it. In years past, when I've proposed some committees and commissions, we've had a very difficult time in recruiting people to participate. So we're not having that challenge here tonight, and I'm happy to see that. But I would be in favor as well in supporting the incumbents that have applied. And if they can't fulfill the term on the library board, then we would open it up certainly before council, and we can appoint somebody else. But that would be my position, and so I just wanted to express my thoughts. Any?
Yeah, I would just also like to thank those that have been serving for their interest in continuing, because I hear nothing but good things, and all the events that I've attended that the library has held have all been very good, and I hear nothing but great things about the board. And also, I was really pleased with all the applicants, because that really shows a lot of interest in our community. So I just hope that the ones that did apply, if you don't get appointed today, don't give up, and maybe you can just volunteer your time, and eventually, I'm sure we'll remember you and give you the opportunity to serve. And I would concur to go ahead and support reappointing the incumbents.
Councilmember Hamby?
I would just like to echo what you have all pretty much said, that the ladies that have volunteered their time over the last few years to be on the library board have done a really great job. There's nothing like concerned and committed community members. That's what makes this town great, and I really am encouraged to see the amount of community participation that's happening, because I think even in some of the other commissions and boards, we're seeing some new interest generated, and that just tells me that people are now to a point where they want to see some positive changes happen. I would be, well, obviously, I think the decision is made. I do really appreciate everyone that's put forward their application. I would be in favor of reappointing Judy Grant. I obviously cannot put in a vote for my own wife, because I imagine that'd be a conflict of interest. I really appreciate Marilyn Miller being here tonight, and I would put her name in as well as Robin Waddy's.
All right. So, is there a motion, any motion to approve an item here? I know we shared and expressed our comments, but is there a motion? Was that a motion that you made, or is it just your comments?
Those were my comments.
Sure.
I mean, I think there's
Sure.
a majority here that's wanting to see the existing board reappointed, so.
Is there a motion to approve and reappoint the,
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to reappoint the
3 applicants? Huh?
the 3 applicants that have expressed interest in reapplying, hence the incumbents.
Sure.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Just for a quick discussion, I do want to mention to you all that certainly your applications are appreciated. We review all the applications that come through, and so, I will state it again, if a member of the board cannot fulfill that duty during the course of their appointment, it would come back before council, and there may be an opening in the near future, so.
Mr. Mayor, one other comment too,
Sure.
if I could. These are public meetings, so you can attend them and be part of them. And I would highly suggest, if you obviously have that interest and that passion for the library, I can tell you right now, Marjo is shaking her head, so is the board. They're always looking for, so those perspectives, the fresh perspective, all that, plug in, get involved, go to the meetings. And there are numerous events. Come get the wisdom that currently exists on there, and
Yeah.
then transition in. There could be succession planning. So I highly encourage those that have expressed an interest, those that are here, those that are not, please get the word out, plug in, get involved.
Thank you. Good points. Any further comments? All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And congratulations. Actually, congratulations to all of you for applying and taking the
Yeah.
time and the effort. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, next is item 4E, discussion potential action to approve resolution number 2018, resolution of the City Council of the City of Brawley, California, appointing members to the Brawley Parks and Recreation Commission with the terms ending June 30th, 2021. Backup material and applications are on pages 69 through 75.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to recuse myself from this particular item.
Okay. So if you recuse yourself, you leave the room? Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll take a little break.
All right. So, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 applicants for 4 positions.
No,
And-
there's 3, George, Mayor
Pardon?
Nava. Fourth one is the youth advisory.
Excuse me, the 4th is a youth advisory, so it's 3 that we're considering here tonight.
Yes. at
There
one.
is no youth applicant?
No.
Okay. So, excuse me, there's 3 positions that we're considering. There's 6 applications, and there are 1, 2, 2 seeking reappointment. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So if, we'll do it just like we did here previously with the library board. If the applicant is here in attendance, if you can please come up, just provide some details, we'd appreciate it. And we'll start with Andrew Colas. Andrew Colas is not here. Mr. Mark Hamby?
Thank you, council, for giving me the opportunity to give you some comments. I moved to Brawley in 1987 after getting a degree in crop science from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I've had the good fortune of growing nearly every crop that's been planted in Imperial Valley except trees in my career, and I'm a longtime grower of grass. We have a lot of parks and a lot of assets here, and I believe with the application of additional expertise and technology, we can make our parks an even better resource for our community. I've had the good fortune of using our facilities here with the pools, for swimming with my kids, organized sports, baseball and soccer on the fields. Had the opportunity to help put together the volunteer fields with Jimmy Abadi and his crew, and that was been a great addition, and I'd like the opportunity to help move things forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamby. Mr. Julio Jauregui.
Good evening, Julio Jauregui. I'm a former Parks and Rec Department Commissioner. I was appointed for only a short term from February to the end of June. And in that short period of time, I've seen a lot of progress with the board that we have right now. I would like to have the opportunity to serve a full term, and I can be an asset to this commission. I work very hard, and there's a lot of people that work in that commission, and I'm very happy to get involved with Brawley. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamby. Ms. Mary Miller? Ms. Miller's not here. Mr. Michael Moore?
My name is Michael Moore. I've been a resident of Brawley since 1965, and I worked at the Lions Pool the first year that it was open.
Oh,
I worked several years, and I coached basketball when I was a teenager and going to IVC. And I played Parks and Rec softball for many, many years. And I just wanted to contribute a little bit. I love to grow plants and trees and garden, so I might be able to help.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Mr. Gil Revelar? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all very much for your interest and your comments and your applications. Go ahead. Did you have a comment? Okay. So we're filling 3 positions. We do have a youth position that has not been filled. We opened that up several years back, but I think we've had very little participation. I'm hoping in the future we can fill that spot.
I believe our city clerk has made inquiries of Brawley Union High School to see when school's back in session, if we could get a name forwarded. That's typically been the way we've generated the candidate.
Right, okay. And if the public can please inquire of anybody you think may be interested, I think that's very important too. It'd be great to have input from somebody who is using the services as a young adult, so I think that would be really important. All right, so any interest in making a recommendation? I would have interest in supporting the incumbents to reappoint, and then there would be an opening, but it's really up to the council. Any comments, Councilmember Henry?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have enjoyed being the city council liaison to the Parks and Rec Commission over the last several months, and having seen especially what Mr. Howdegi has been able to accomplish there in his short time as far as drumming up donations of fertilizer and grass seed and so forth. He obviously has an enthusiasm for seeing improvement in our parks. Today at the Parks and Rec Commission meeting, I think it was Marjo Mello and maybe Miguel Perez who both made the point that that there is a lot more interest in the condition of the parks, and Rusty Garcia said that he hadn't seen that much enthusiasm and conversation in the Parks and Rec meetings since his time on that commission. So those are very encouraging things to see. So I definitely would like to forward Julio Jauregui's name. I would also like to see Andrew Colas. His application shows some ag experience, which I think would be helpful for the parks. And also I'd like to see Michael Moore appointed as well. Those are my 3 recommendations.
All right. Any comments?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Again, reading over the applications very carefully, I'm fortunate I, in some form or fashion, know most of the applicants, and as Mr. Hamby came up here and explained, I have absolute knowledge that he does have that experience, so he can grow just about anything. And it's also, it's great to see, I happen to know Mr. Colas too, comes from a multi-generational farming family as well. So I think all those things are great. And I think Mr. Moore, who I don't know, mentioned, again, having some expertise or maybe an affinity for that as well. So I think there's a theme here, and I do want to thank my fellow council member, Luke, also for your participation on the Parks and Rec Board. I think that's part of what's probably regenerated the enthusiasm on that commission. So I will defer a little bit there. I will say, and Mr. Jauregui, just to make the comment, being serving 1 year, thank you for doing that. And good news, I'm aligned with the Dodgers as well, so that helps. I'm not a Raider fan. But I'm inclined to go with Ms. Mary Miller, who has served numerous years, again, with some expertise there. Also Mr. Jauregui, and I would like to see Mr. Colas as also an applicant for that position. So that would be my slate, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And I support the reappointment, so that was Mr. Jauregui, Ms. Miller. Ms. Miller I've worked with for many years on downtown issues and on the Parks and Rec Commission for many, many years. So I know that she works very hard at supporting Brawley, so I'm happy to support her and Mr. Jauregui. And with respect to the other applicants, they're all great applicants. Mr. Moore, Mr. Hamby, Mr. Colas. So I'll if the desire is to support Mr. Colas on this, I know that Mr. Hamby will continue to assist, and I'm sure Mr. Moore will as well. So, anybody would like to make a motion on that big regard, then we can move forward. So.
Before I make that motion, and I'll be remiss, I didn't mention Mr. Revelar again.
I'm
same
sorry,
thing,
Mr.
yeah.
Revelar.
I don't know what, if the theme is agriculture, what maybe the experience is, but there's no question that, again, the same passion to see the improvements within our parks. So, again, I appreciate his application.
No, and certainly, and my apologies as well. I was referencing the people that either applied
Yes.
for reappointment or presented, so.
Once again, I'm going to echo before I make a motion, all of these applicants can plug in, be part of the Parks and Rec Commission. They are open meetings. Please participate, be part of it. These positions open up actually because there's sometimes 3 seats, sometimes 2 seats, but we have seen in years past where we didn't have the participation. So certainly not to quell the enthusiasm, please plug in and be part of these meetings and be part of these efforts. Because I think, as Mr. Hamby will say, there's going to be a lot of volunteerism involved in some of these projects.
Absolutely.
So with that said, I make a motion to appoint Ms. Mary Miller, Julio Jauregui, and Andrew Colas. That's my motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
There's a second to the motion, all right. So any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, thank you. And congratulations to you all, and thank you all very much for coming out here, appreciate it. Mr. Moore, appreciate your interest, and Mr. Hamby as well, thank you. We'll get Councilmember Howdigy back in here. Next item on the agenda is item F, discussion potential action regarding Brawley Chamber of Commerce bylaw changes, term limits for non-voting ex officio city council representative in the backup materials on page 76. This is a letter that was received from the Brawley Chamber of Commerce with respect to some changes that they made to their bylaws that affect the appointment of a city council representative. I'm hoping everybody had an opportunity to review the letter, but the director's here, if you'd like to share any comments.
Just happy to answer any questions. The letter was received from our president, Ralph Fernandez, so any questions that I may assist with you, I'll do my best.
Thank you. So it's a non-voting member. What was the status previous?
It was, per the bylaws, it did not specify if it was voting or non-voting. It just said city representative.
Is there, what was the reasoning behind non-voting, having the city representative as a non-voting member?
There was previous discussion with Sam. I'm not 100% sure on what the discussion was, but I think there was some sentiment that it would be best if it was just a representative role versus a voting member. I'm not sure of the specifics of that.
Any comments from council?
Is this similar to the other commissions and boards and committees where it's like a council liaison that is just there for observation and information?
On other boards, we typically have a voice and have a vote, and so.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess we're.
Perhaps one of the distinctions is the liaison work for existing bodies such as Planning Commission,
Right.
Parks and Rec Commission, Library Board. The seated members that council participates in appointing are the voting members and council's appointees to other bodies. But other examples would be a NOCA liaison. We'd have to look at whether or not NOCA has a voting role or if it's non-voting. Do you recall off the top of your head on that?
I believe it's non-voting.
Yeah, Ivy Housing
I-
Authority is also non-voting.
I think generally speaking, though, anytime we make a contribution, we have a voting position. So I think that's probably best said, yeah. So, at any IVDC, ICTC, we contribute,
Film Commission.
Film Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anytime that we contribute, we would have a voting
Okay.
position.
Gotcha.
Is that something that could be, are we looking for reconsideration on that from the chamber?
I think that would be important, just as a contributor to the chamber, and being a significant contributor, I think, and especially after the discussions we've had more recently where we've, generally accepted the fact that we would show greater support. I think it'd be important for our city and our city representative to have, a vote.
I'll definitely, we have a board meeting coming up. I'll make sure that it's on the agenda for them to discuss.
Now, with respect to the current appointment, as I understand it, Councilmember Couchman has served the term that's been, the limit that's been assigned here, so we're looking for, we have our alternate, so I would like for our alternate to become the next appointed member.
I'd be glad to accept that.
And then anybody else who would like to be the alternate for that position? Is there any interest from council?
I would be interested in being the alternate.
Okay. So having said that, if there's no further comments, is there further comments from anybody?
Yeah, my only comment was just I was taken a little aback to read the letter in my council packet, so it would have been a little more helpful for me to actually have some idea. I don't know if that would have been conversation or somebody from the board. So I was a little surprised. I'm taken, not necessarily in a negative way, but it seemed like a pretty significant change in terms of, it wasn't so much the nature of having term limits, so much the timing of the term limit coming up so sudden and making a quick change there. So I didn't know what was behind it or what, you know.
I know
what
that it's been
precipitated it.
discussed on several occasions, in our board meetings as well as with Sam, so.
Okay.
If he hasn't shared, you know, I
It may
apologize
be
on
him.
his
Yeah.
behalf. And I know that, it was addressed to the council, the letter, so I do
That's fine.
apologize for that, but we'll make sure to note next time too.
Not, and I was going to further comment, understandably so, as well as, you know, Sam, anybody that's associated obviously with the chamber. So, I mean, that'd be my only comment. I certainly understand that as an entity, this is what you want to do, is make the best decision for the, you know, chamber. So, thank you.
All right, so,
Would there be an action coming up?
Yeah.
yeah, is there a motion to approve having Councilmember Norma Kastner-Howdy as the city representative and Councilmember Hamby as the alternate? Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. G, are we considering that?
Has been pulled.
Item G is being pulled and tabled for a future date by request of the applicant there, right?
It's withdrawn as a
It's
request.
withdrawn. It's withdrawn. Very well. All right. H, discussion staff direction regarding former Pure Grow site located at 1025 River Drive and engagement of Center for Creative Land Recycling, CCLR. And so this is being presented by our city manager.
Yes, and just a brief couple of comments to share. This topic continues to evolve. This involves the Pure Grow facility on River and Cesar Chavez. Wanted to provide council an update with quite a bit of communication that has occurred since we last forwarded our comment letter that was directed to the Department of Toxics and Substance Control, asking for the engagement of an outside technical assistant, consultant to aid the community in defining community benefits and developing a meaningful remediation action plan. So the good news is that Chevron, who is the property owner, has agreed in concept. The Department of Toxics and Substance Control has agreed in concept, and many of our community stakeholders have been advised of the city's position and have been generally supportive of the concept. Where the rub is, and I'm not sure we're at a point this evening for any kind of action, I just want to be sure that we're giving the topic the visibility that it is deserving of. It's become clear that there are some concerns with the timing of getting the process jump-started again to a point where a plan is developed. And there's a hope on the part of not only our residents, but some of the other audiences as well, to try to reach a finish line prior to the change in administration at the state level. And so what that has done is, here we are in July, and a potential change in December. For council, just to jog memories a little bit, one of the frustrations on the part of many of our residents has been the amount of time that it's taken to get to an actual solution and remediation of that property. So there's an interest in moving rapidly, but the challenge is engaging this outside consultant on DTSE's terms. We do have a rough scope of work that's been drafted that is in the process of being circulated and commented upon. The rub at this moment is that DTSE is requesting, and I received a letter just this afternoon. I asked for them to put their request in writing to the city, and I asked the same of Chevron. Both entities have approached the city and asked the city to be the organization that contracts with the Center for Creative Land Recycling. Our position to date has been, we want this process to be fully integrated with the lead agency, which is DTSE. You'll see from the letter that was provided, and there are copies here for anybody in the audience who may be interested. You'll see there is clearly a timing issue for procurement from DTSE's point of view. I did have a chance to direct some additional questions their way, and I haven't received a response. What they've indicated is they would have to go out to a bidding process, and that process has timetables associated with it that aren't consistent with working rapidly towards the end of this calendar year. And so, more than anything, I want to let council know that I continue to be concerned as staff that the direction that we're going to head in light of what our position has been with not being the entity responsible. And obviously, even if we were party to a contract, we don't have control of the process. So in some ways, not having it fully integrated, I think, introduces some questions as to whether or not the final work product will be owned and fully considered in the process. In the spirit of disclosure, Chevron has stated to me they're open to any number of arrangements, including the city just being a fiscal agent and DTSE coming up with some kind of agreement where DTSE would still be in charge, but we'd be the admin vehicle for the so it's not, the most clean-cut arrangement. I did have an opportunity to talk a little earlier today, right before we came into the public session, with Comité Cívico del Valle, which has been very actively engaged in many of the discussion points. And I'm not sure if there are any representatives that may be here tonight that want to speak to the topic. There was a chance that Luis Olmedo was out of the valley for the week, but we did have a chance to talk about what different arrangements might look like. He was interested in seeing the topic continuing to be pressed from the point of view of elevating it to state legislative hearing and forcing the topic of direct engagement of CCLR with the state agency. So we're continuing to explore alternatives. More than anything, I just want to keep council fully up to date because, Thursday of last week, it was an emergency as we were posting. Chevron said, Rosanna, we'll make an award of funds if you'll be the administrator at the city. My concern is if we say no, are we going to eliminate the opportunity to work with an outside technical assisting agency? So I will keep you apprised of how things progress. There is potential, I know our kind of tentative plan for summer this was our last regularly scheduled meeting. We do have some other business items that may be up for consideration if council's open to meeting again, and I would assume whatever that date could be, that we'd have more information on this topic by then. The rough scope of work, just so you're aware, to scale of the project is about $75,000. So that's what's at play as a contracting relationship to engage the outside resource.
All right.
So I don't know if you have any comments or questions or anything I can help with right now. If not, happy to
Once
field
we
any
involve
questions.
ourselves, and that's the risk, so it's just a complicated matter now. And so, any comments from the city council at this point with respect to this item?
I would just say the timing issue is obviously going to be a great concern, and I think the concern on behalf of all of us and citizens is that, again, the project is indefinitely delayed. There's an opportunity right now to press forward with a plan that's hopefully compliant, and safe and healthy. So I think whatever comes up from these next communications or next steps. I think council will be interested in knowing what we can do to push the timetable to see progress so this can get done. My only question is just if we do get past the end of the year, what's at jeopardy, the entire project, or has that been communicated, or if there is an administrative change, or?
I think there is at least a sentiment. It's not documented
Right.
or expressed in writing that it will become less of a priority project. Right now, it's a project that's on the to-do list with a great deal of attention focused on it.
Okay.
And so with the changing in leadership positions for those state agencies, it may experience a delay.
Is there any comment from the public? Chevron can pay for this?
Eric Reyes, 1128 Elm Court. Having been involved in this issue for quite some time, and considering the last meeting we had with stakeholders, which was a complete waste of time from a stakeholder point of view, I would think, and then having received from DTSC the proposed timeline that they have, a couple of meetings in the fall, the winter, and then a kind of a decision in the spring and implementation next fall to winter of 2019, I think bringing on another entity which would further delay the process is something we don't need. We are very clear as a community what we want, demand, and we want to go further in this. You're just giving another layer of protection to DTSC and Chevron to get away from their responsibility. It's unneeded. This, what are they going to bring to the table that Comité Cívico and other stakeholders already can't bring? We already engaged at all levels, and the city is also engaged at many levels as well. What solution beyond what we as a community have demanded, have made known through our meetings with DTSC, have made known through written responses to the state, have made known to our state representatives, Hueso and Garcia at the state level, and their colleagues, what is this organization going to bring to the table that would improve that? It's not going to change what the community wants. It's not going to change the process. All it's going to do is delay the process, not improve it. We can do stakeholder meetings, outreach better than someone is going to say, and they said, oh, we're going to take time to learn the community. We already know it. We know it inside out, and we're the best at it. Why do we need what's the name of the organization? I have the top of my head.
It's the Center for Creative Land Recycling.
Resources?
And I know they have actually offered some solutions in other projects as I researched them, but that was in projects looking for different solutions. We know what we want. We know what we're demanding. And we want DTSC to stand up to Chevron and demand that as well. They're shirking their responsibility, obviously. And comments on side conversation with some councilmen, it seems that DTSC is the problem, not Chevron at this point. It seems DTSC is afraid of taking on a corporate giant, conglomerate, world-known product and so on, right? It seems that you have to support, you as city council, you need to support the community on this one 100%, not continue to delay the process, but make it happen as well. The fish are cut bait, as they would say, right? We need to make DTC make a decision. And once they make a decision, if it's not what we decide, what we want, then we're going to go further beyond that as well, litigation and so on, everything else. We can't, that community has suffered already. That community is continue to suffer. And like I said, like we've said many times, many of us that are involved in this issue, it had been in another community, it had been in another neighborhood, even within the city of Brawley, it would no longer be there. And I would say that I would stake my reputation on it. And I would say definitely for sure, because this is an underserved community, 90% people of color, poorest, one of the poorest county in the state of California, if not the nation. It's a travesty. It's an embarrassment. And we want the city also to stand by us and stand us and say, no, we don't need that at this time. We need to move forward with what we have and the plan that the people have demanded and move forward as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Any further comments?
Good evening, members of the council. Alex Solis, Comité Cívico del Valle. I'm here today to speak on the Pure Grow Site Remediation Action Plan. As a community resident, born in Brawley and raised across the street from the site in question, this issue is extremely personal. As an EJ advocate, representing 6 different regions of the state, implementing 617 policy in Sacramento, the same can be said. It seems to me that plenty of people here today are deciding how to resolve this issue. And not one of the people making this decision grew up or still reside in my neighborhood. I, along with my family and neighbors, still do. To put it in perspective, in 1993, Pure Grow was found guilty of illegal toxic dumping at the New River from the Heber site. In that newspaper article, the FBI San Diego office was quoted, "Imperial County is a fertile area for environmental crimes as far as the FBI is concerned." That was 1993. In 2004, the DTSC finally took action in recognizing Pure Grow's violation. It issued an imminent and substantial endangerment determination and consent order. Due to those findings, they outlined for Pure Grow how to correct the issue. In that initial order, it was specifically outlined as to what steps Pure Grow needed to take in order to comply. Still today, no evidence exists that they were ever in compliance. It's 2018, here we are again, outlining a new remediation action plan, asking for the community to lend its support. It's 25 years since they were found guilty. DTSC claims it's no longer a toxic site after Chevron gave its findings from studies they conducted. Where have those toxins gone? Who has ingested those toxins? Who has continued to live there with this problem? The community. You are asking for support. That's who. Now we are asking for your support. Help us to remove this toxic site for good. Don't ask us to live with it any longer, as we have for over 30 years. If the DTSC and Chevron claim it's not harmful, then support us, your residents, in relocating it to their communities and their backyards, so they can deal with it for the next 30 years. We need to hold DTSC accountable for siding with industry at the expense of our community. It's time for us to make a difference. Enough is enough. Comité Cívico's position is to support our council, support our elected officials in removing this site. That's where the community stands, and that's where we stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solis. Just as a refresher to the council and the public, we have stated publicly that we want to support what the community's request is, and I still stand by that statement. So I do want to make sure that that's very clear to everybody. I know we've had meetings, outreach, and a little bit of an off comment, but one comment that I was going to make earlier on another item on the agenda as we were sitting and contemplating a decision, not to fault council, but I think oftentimes we delay and we talk about things so long that there's no action, and it's a delayed action. And quite honestly, we just need to decide. That's what we're elected to do. We decide, and we move forward. And in this particular item, with this particular case, it's something that we've heard from the public on. We know what's being requested, and I would like to see it advance and be remediated sooner than later. So those are my comments on the item. Is there any additional information that you can share with us?
Just a comment of note, the reason for C-Clear's engagement is not to overstep any of the community participation locally. It's actually to take the desires of the community and translate them into language that DTSC will accept and Chevron will accept. The primary features include things such as removal of the stockpile. They include items that I think I've touched on with some of our EJ advocates, creating a buffer zone. Those ideas actually came from C-Clear. They said these are things that work in other places. You may not be able to achieve that highest level of cleanup as though it's a residential land use designation. But if the communities focus is on having the greatest cleanup that can be accomplished, maybe there's some ground to negotiate as to what those features could be. And that's the reason that the city submitted the letter asking for CCLR. What we did not anticipate was that the dynamics would shift to a point where the city was asked to engage the entity and be reimbursed, as opposed to embedding that activity in the regulating agency, which is DTSE.
Any further comments?
I do have one question with Mr. Reyes's proposal to fish or cut bait. Move forward, make the community's wishes known or demands known, and go with those demands. And then he mentioned litigation if and when our proposal is rejected. Is that the city's responsibility, the litigation part of that? Is that what the idea is?
I don't believe that's what, and I don't want to speak for him, but Mr. Reyes, if you'd like to address that? I don't believe that that's what he
We
was
don't wanna
referring
get
to.
sued.
I think,
That's not the initial premise that we have. We have people who will take this on, but we expect the city to support and also have an enhanced litigation possible situation ready as well on the part of the city. If we're doing the hard work, the groundwork, putting it out there, we would expect the city also to weigh in, because I'm thinking that's what the city wants as well, the best possible solution for our community. So I think the city, has a responsibility to review it once there is litigation and possibly join. Yes, I do. Hope the city will, if it's advantageous to the actual lawsuit once it's filed, yes.
thank you. Thank you. Any other comments?
Well, I'm kind of, because of the information that was shared by Rosanna, what can we do at this point to kind of speed up the process and engaging CCLR to move forward? We don't want to be, the city does not want to be the contractor. So what can we do at this point, or what's the next step?
Either we can change course and agree to be the entity that contracts and devise a strategy for DTSE's guaranteed integration of their body of work. We could work out an MOU or something to that effect to accomplish it, or B, hold the line and determine, is there really no other option for DTSE to engage, or is this just an uncomfortable position that they're in and not willing to consider at this time?
Yeah, because the way their letter is phrased as well, I mean, it may not even be CCLR that is ultimately involved. It may be some other agency that would have to go out to bid, and it may end up being some other agency that's being, brought into the mix, and that just further delays, the issue. So.
Yeah, to avoid the delays, so is there a possibility of re-engaging with our state senator and assembly member to see if we can get DTSC to move on this?
Or we can hold the line, holding the
is
line.
an
And
option.
we've stated our position as a city, that we have stated publicly and in writing that we are supportive of the community stakeholders and their efforts to see the remediation plan move forward that they've talked about and proposed. So I think that's, that's an option we have here as a city council.
So I think I've got some staff direction. As new information becomes available, I will share it with the council and stakeholders.
Just so we're clear, though, with respect to, we're asking for staff direction here. Is it the council's decision to move forward with the course that we've taken? We have presented them what we've wanted to do. They know and they're aware of that. Is that still the direction that we want to take? I am saying
so.
yes.
I think
I
so,
don't see any
yes.
reason to change our tack.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think those conversations were very recent as well as today, so I think if that can be communicated ASAP tomorrow morning, and then I think it'd be important that we know what the reaction is.
Yeah,
'Cause I
very
think,
well.
up to the minute, I don't know if we want to wait too long to find out what the
Right,
reaction is.
I would agree. This was received today, so, yeah.
3:45.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's the staff direction, so thank you, and thank you for your participation. Next item on the agenda, we moved an item that was a council member report, 6A. We moved it to the tail end of regular business, so it's regular business item 4I, and it's going to be presented by Councilmember Hamby, Park Restoration Proof of Concept at Hinojosa Park. He has some backup material that he's developed, pages 86 through 92. So, Councilmember Hamby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There has been, some significant improvements at Hinojosa Park recently due to an almost $1 million grant. And the improvements that were made, a lot of flat work, a lot of concrete, basketball courts, sidewalks, and a workout station that is handicap accessible, ADA accessible. And I think that's sparked a lot of interest in the communities around Hinojosa Park, and I think it was a great effort that was put forward by those that applied for the grant and the execution of it. I spoke with Miguel Perez today at the Parks and Rec meeting, and we talked about plans that the Parks and Rec Department has for improvement of parks, grass coverage specifically, and aeration is one of the things on the schedule. And I'm very pleased to hear that there are items on their agenda that have not been in the past year or two or more in the way of parks maintenance and just in general making the city look better. And I don't know all the reasons for that, but I credit Marjo Mello with her directorial abilities, and I appreciate Miguel Perez for the work that he's putting into planning and scheduling the work that happens there. And so what I'm wanting to propose is something that will work alongside of what the Parks Department is doing in the way of improvements. One of the things that was not addressed in the grant that was received is grass improvement at Hinojosa Park, and obviously with all the equipment that's been running over it for the last few months, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get that back up and in shape. But what I'm proposing is a small allotment to help along that way, but also a little different method so that we have something to compare to regular aeration. And this is a deep core drill and fill. It's similar to aeration in that it's poking holes in the ground, but in this case it's a machine that drills, that's got, I believe it's dozens of carbide tipped drill bits that drill holes in the ground, inch to inch and a half in diameter each, and anywhere from 8 to 18 inches deep. And then as the drill bits are extracted, there's sand that is injected into those holes. And what that does is it helps create better drainage, better percolation of water into the soil. It gives place for the grass roots to fill in, where I think a lot of our problem here is compaction of the soil and clay that's directly beneath the soil often. And so water either sits on top or percolates down to the clay and stops. And then with all the activity that we have in our parks, which I love to see, that's just, it compacts that soil. And so Mr. Perez has talked about instituting a regular aeration schedule, which I think is going to be very vital for helping that grass coverage to fill in on the parks that have dirt areas currently. But what I'd like to do is take a small section of Hinojosa Park and try out this drill and fill system as a proof of concept to see if it's something that surpasses what the regular aeration schedule can do, and also to see if it's something that we would like to do in the rest of the parks, the rest of Hinojosa Park, and eventually throughout the city. It's something that where aeration will help for a short period of time. It's something that you probably want to do once or twice or more a year. The drill and fill is something that lasts many years, And so it would be enhanced by regular aeration schedule, but this is to get the soil in the parks back into a place where decades of compaction will be undone in a very short amount of time. So, and along with this drill and fill process, I would like to engage volunteers from the community to help out on the handball courts. There have been interested parties, community members that use those handball courts regularly that have approached me and asked what they can do to help improve those courts. Parks and Rec has recently repainted those, but unfortunately we've got layer upon layer of paint and plaster that has created a very heavy texture over the years, and it interferes with the play of the ball as they use that court. And so I would like to, what I'm asking for is an amount of $5,000 to cover the drill and fill team to come in. It's not something that the city would rent and use. It's a team that comes in, actually does the work in the proposed area. And then I think between expert volunteers and maybe some help from Parks and Rec employees, get the irrigation in that particular area at 100%. And then the remainder of the money would be put together with volunteer work to smooth and repair those handball court walls and grind and patch cracks that are in the concrete base, the floor of those courts. So I had sent a YouTube video. Maybe this would be a good time to show that for the drill and fill process.
It's like hair plugs for the lawn. I want to get some drill and fill like right.
They have those. They have them. They're much more expensive than this.
You don't want big holes.
See, maybe a little back there too. What's the drill and fill?
We talked about that today. Fertilizer, whatever you need.
I think it's, should put it here? Oh, right here. Yeah.
Marvin Church Services has been contracted out to perform the drill and fill process.
Can you move there?
Drill and fill machine
Yeah, there you go.
consists of 24 1-inch carbide tip drill bits. These drill bits are 10 inches long and drill down into the green. The drill bits remove the old material from the green and inject clean sand back into the freshly drilled mold. You can tell there's a lot of holes on this green, number 18. Our staff makes sure every hole is filled to the brim to create a great channel of drainage.
We just hired a bunch of gophers,
Our team is also responsible for filling the hopper on the top of this machine. Make sure there's always sand being injected into the hole. Marvin Surf Services has brought 2 machines with them today. And they can do about a putty green about every hour. Behind the drill and fill process, we are quarter aerating with 1 inch or 1/4 inch hollow tines. All of the material is then pushed off and collected. The green has been blown off and rolled, and soil amendments are added, and everything is watered in.
Did they show an after on the video?
Yes, well, they're showing aeration happening there.
Finishing the drill and fill on this green. Dan Smith, one of our assistant superintendents, starting to aerate this green. The cores from this process, as well as the drill and fill material, will all be pushed off and cleaned up.
I know, right?
Have
Yeah.
golf courses.
Yeah.
So
So,
if I get the plugs, I'll let you watch.
So-
I know there won't be.
Yeah. So this would, as I said, it would just enhance or go alongside of what Parks and Rec is already doing in Hinojosa. I know that they have as I said, an aeration schedule, and that's certainly better than nothing to aerate, for sure. But I would love to see what this could do for these areas that are heavily compacted. So that's what I'm asking for. I know that there are many interested community members here in Brawley that would put their hand to the labor part of, helping out with the handball courts, and even people that are expert in lawn irrigation that would help out with the sprinkler systems in this area if we're needing to add in more sprinkler heads or try something different from what we've had there. But I don't want to, I'm not presenting this to downplay anything that Parks and Rec is currently doing. And after the meeting today, I was very encouraged both by what's on the schedule and what's been accomplished in the recent past, and by the newly generated public interest in greening up our city. I truly believe that we have every potential to be the gem of Imperial Valley, and what makes it that way is the trees and the grass that we have here. There's plenty of evidence to show that more trees and more grass bring up property values and cool down the neighborhoods as well. And I think this would be something that would help and enhance Hinojosa Park, and as a proof of concept to show what we might be able to accomplish in other parts of the city.
Very well. All right. With respect to, interesting concept. With respect to your comment, though, that we are the gym. I mean, we really are. And
We're not El
that's one
Centro,
thing.
as other people pointed out last
We
meeting.
have had, a very successful Parks and Rec department. Our parks are well attended and used, and in fact, we have people that come from throughout the valley to use our facilities. So, I do support them. Part of the issue that we have is just from heavy use. And we
Right.
have had some very significant improvements from grant funding and from, local sources as well throughout our community. So I'm very proud of our parks. I know that we have some work to do, certainly. Aeration is one of them, but I know that there was an extensive list of items that came out recently to the city council from Marjo. Can you just describe briefly some of the things that Parks and Rec are working on currently, just for the benefit of the public, please?
Sure. Well, the aeration that we do is a very little small, the guy at the end doing the parts. So we've been doing that. But one of the things that we've been working on is to identify broken sprinklers, those that need changing. And because of having all the new great sidewalks at Hinojosa and other things, staff is taking the time to turn the water on and off manually, watch the sprinklers and change them, because in some areas they may have had a 360 degree, and now that there's a sidewalk, we need to have a 180 or a different angle that if I was more mathy, I would describe, but that's it. They also made some electrical upgrades and things, so we will be able to eventually go back to putting the sprinklers on timers. And like I said, right now during this transition, which will take a while, we're able to do that. They already have a schedule of starting to do aeration, and from what Miguel explains, because he's really good at explaining it to me because I don't understand it, is with aeration you go in one direction, and then you go back through and put the fertilizer all over it, and then you aerate in the other direction, which helps compact the fertilizer back down and the seed back down. And we have Mr. Jauregui has been instrumental in getting a lot of really good donations, so we haven't had to actually purchase the fertilizer and the seed and some of the things we're doing, which goes back to what Mr. Hamby was saying about the community totally supporting what we do, and that there are people out there that really like to make a difference for us. We're also at this time, they're fixing the electrical panels for the lights at the Hinojosa Park too, and that is in the hands of the contractor, his vendor, and our IT person here in the city, working on that one. The handball courts were rehabbed. One of the things that we're concerned about with any work on the handball court is to make sure that we have a lead paint study. I didn't say that right. To make sure, because as you pointed out, it's been painted over and over and over, and we want to make sure that none of the really low layers are scary for anybody to work around. And then if there's no lead paint, the process that you described about gouges, rough spots, sanding it down, you know, having a professional sanding might work. I have another section on trees that we're working on also, that 4 trees were completely taken out of that particular park. We already have a person in the neighborhood who lives in the Smurf house who would like to replace at least one. And then we also have that great urban forestry project where we will have a lot of trees to be able to put in the parks all over. So that'll be a really cool thing to add in there. Let's see. And we also have a schedule, as we mentioned, for aeration, where right now we're going to be focusing on Hinojosa, and because it's between sports seasons, we're also going to be working on Meserve Field. So you will see in the next 2-3 weeks aeration at both of those fields and the whole process that we're going through, including flooding it, so it's not really, those 2 won't be available because it's kept very wet for like 3 weeks. And they recently did this with Abe Gonzalez Park in between the softball seasons and I think it was T-ball. Yep, T-ball. There was a 3 to 4 week break, and they did all of that there. And then after those 2 parks, the next 2 parks will be Del Rio and Guadalupe, thank you. Park will have the aeration done, and then there's Venice Cattle Call. And then after that, we go back to an aeration schedule for different fields that we're doing. So what this is proposed for an area sounds pretty interesting, especially watching the video. That was cool. I just want to watch it for about 2 minutes and I'm done, but that kind of a thing. So, yeah, and that's just the Parks Department. And plus they cut the grass 4 times a week, all the grass 4 times a week. They know every blade, and all the other things that they do every day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it looks like there are some things, and I'm hoping that helps improve, you know, things restore and build, so there is some work being done. Interesting concept. I think just the cost involved that would be the concern for council, and maybe I'm speaking for everybody, but certainly that's something that we're looking at closely just because we still have to approve our budget. So that would be my only concern, really, but with respect to what can result from it, that's interesting, you know, and so I could be supportive of it, just if we can find a method to help offset the cost, I think would be very important. Any comments?
Well, I think it's something that we probably would be wise to invest in. I think that, I mean, like we all said, our parks look good compared to the other cities in the valley, but if we had parks that look like golf courses, my goodness, I mean, we'd really be. And based on the video, it looks like something that would be a wise investment. But like you said, I don't know if we need to wait for a budget review or where we are on that.
Yeah, so this would just
looking
be
for
a
action right now, or-
group that would come in and do the work themselves, and
Right, as far as that drill and fill, that is a company that comes in and does all of that work. The irrigation stuff, that has to be done with either volunteers or cities or Parks and Rec employees. And then the handball court, again, can be, I think the majority of that can be volunteer work, and I think there are plenty of interested community members that would put their time into that without having to utilize much or any city staff to make that happen.
Just a couple items maybe for council to consider on the go forward. If there's public money involved, we cross into the realm of prevailing wage, and anything that hits the $5,000 mark thrusts us into the public bidding process, which can sometimes produce well, more often than not, elevated numbers. So just want to caution that that piece, maybe this is a project to undertake in the next fiscal year, and it could be considered as part of the budget discussions that have yet to be completed for the fiscal year. And with reference to the handball courts, we did look at ways to piggyback on existing contracts. We've looked at both the senior center and Hinojosa, how to kind of utilize those remainder funds. The complication at the handball court is the need to do lead-based paint testing and go through that whole process that's associated with it. So we couldn't just assign volunteers
Sure.
to go and scrape. We need to kind of go through the steps
Right.
and do some project management of it. So it's not something that we would just assign to volunteers to perform. It really is working with the manpower that we have and figuring how do we accomplish that in addition to the weekly duties that are part of operations.
How complicated and time-consuming is a lead test for that paint?
We'd have to find an outside, we don't have in-house capability to do it, so we need to hire a party to come out and test it.
You're not able to just take a fleck of the paint and send it to a company that does testing?
I believe we use an outside firm. Yes, sir.
Yeah. You want to come up here, please? He does.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. It takes about, depending on the workload that they have, and it's an outsource, it depends anywhere from a week to a month to come out here. And they get the samples, they do the proper sealing and everything, and they go out and test.
Would you have an idea of what it would cost?
It,
or-
it runs anywhere from $700 to $1,500. It all depends what they find or what needs to be.
Yeah, and that's just the testing, it's not remediation if there is in fact lead.
I did approach a sandblasting company that does our rocks, and they would have to go through the process of
Sure.
getting the test, and they charge by square footage to sandblast the wall. So I'm supposed to meet with them sometime this week when they're down here in Brawley and to look into it. That's about it. One of the things that I do want to mention on the aerating, now that you mentioned sand and all that good stuff, we've done something similar with the baseball field in conjunction with the high school. They've brought in dirt that's left over from the carrots
Carrot dirt,
at Westmoreland. So Mr. Abadi has brought in, I think, 4 loads of dirt, and we spread it out ourselves with our small equipment that we have, and it's worked out pretty good. We've done the aerating and everything before, and then we just scrape it in. That's another idea,
Consider.
cheaper.
Is that
Yeah.
sandy dirt? Is that-
Yes, it's sandy
Yeah.
dirt.
I've used carrot dirt, I wouldn't say 100 times, but I've used it dozens and dozens of times on different housing projects, and I use the same thing. I typically will source it from like Elms, and they deliver it, and I spread it out, throw seed on it, everything grows on that stuff. So yeah, it's another alternative. I mean, that's something else to consider as well.
Yeah, I guess that the main thing is just the compaction. If it's
Yeah.
if it's compacted underneath it, eventually
Yeah.
the grass doesn't have anywhere to grow into. And but again, that is certainly better than not doing it. And so if you know, if we can't find room for a $5,000 allotment to test this area, certainly like to see that happen rather than nothing. But as far as the lead mitigation, if there is lead in the paint, I've also looked at other options for just encapsulating what's there, either using a glue method where they roll on a masonry adhesive onto what's existing and then stucco texture over that, which would then we wouldn't have to scrape or sandblast any of that, so that may be an option. A more expensive option is lathing over the entire wall and doing the full 3 coats of stucco, you know, to get it smooth. But anyway, I'm trying to find out what it would cost to do the glue and texture process instead of scraping if there is lead. I think if we need to get a lead study done on it for any improvement in the future, I would love to see that done sooner rather than later, just to know. If there's no lead in it, then I think it would be easier to set up a volunteer group to do scraping, sanding, or if we can't afford a sandblasting crew to come in, I think there are ways to at least make it much better than what it is currently for the users with volunteer help. So I think I would love to see, even if we take a portion of this $5,000 and put it toward a lead test to see if that's, you know, part of the problem there or not. I would love to see that happen soon.
Well, it's not necessarily an action item today. I know it's just a presentation, but can we bring the item back for discussion and for action in the near future? I know at our next meeting will be at the beginning of September, and we may have a meeting at some point in August. You know, I would like to see the parks improved, certainly. You know, I would be concerned with the cost. But
Yeah.
that would be.
And Mr. Mayor, before we move on to the next topic, I just wanted to chime in also. I just in reading it, I first off want to commend, obviously, Councilmember Hamby for putting the time, you know, and effort in putting that together. My only concern is just even discovery here, just hearing from staff, is that would be my only issue, is that typically these things come from staff because
Sure.
they're vetted, there's a process, and everything's considered, including fiscal, and I trust that process, and if not, I would question it here publicly. So that'd be my only concern. I just want to make sure it comes through the proper channel so that I have all the information in front of me. But having said that, the drill and fill I read it in here. That's a demo. We could have them come out and
Exactly.
demonstrate it on this plot.
Exactly.
So what would that cost for us
Well,
just
that's
to have
what
the demo?
I think it's in the $4,000 to $4,500 range for
Okay.
the
So
square
if
footage
it's-
that we're looking at.
If it's
and-
under the 5,000 or under whatever the threshold, I understand, because I don't want to trigger
Sure,
prevailing
yeah,
wage.
would
I don't
lov-
think you
would-
do either.
I would drop
Yeah.
it to $49.95 for that and
Whatever.
and the
Prevailing
volunteer
wage.
help.
It's going to be.
5,000 is the
1,000?
state
Okay.
contract.
That's a
It
contract.
doesn't avoid it.
See,
Well, that's
I
before we
don't
go
know
to
the-
bid. Uh-huh.
And I don't have all those numbers in my head, and it doesn't sound like you do either, Councilmember Hamby. As far as not knowing that's my issue.
Sure.
So I don't want a 1,000, 1,500,
Right.
5,000 allotment turn into 18,000
Yeah, sure.
because we didn't do our homework.
Yeah.
So that'd be my only comment on that. Other than that, I think for the most part, I'd like to see this happen and do what we need to do to, kind of like you said, proof of concept. Let's see if we can really grow some superior, you know, turf in an area that's been heavily compacted. And then I'd like to see I was hoping there was a smaller version of that thing that can fit my backyard.
Yeah, that would
Because
be
I think
nice.
I need that too.
Would be
Um,
Is there
I need
a
it for
smaller
my-
version
I
though?
need it for
Is
my
there
front yard.
something that's different?
Yeah, it would be you getting a masonry drill bit, putting it on a drill, and
No,
going through.
but in all seriousness,
I
is
don't,
there?
I don't know.
Yeah?
That's the only machine I've seen like that. And they're all that size. So
Well, it seemed like one of them was smaller than the other, though, so it may be, is it something that can be rented?
I've not seen that. I think it's there's enough complexity to it that they want their dedicated crew that knows how to load it, knows how to operate it, and not hit sprinkler lines or heads or whatever.
Could we, if nothing else, I mean, whether it comes back to council for certain funding, but it sounds like still the monies we're talking about potentially with some volunteerism. I don't know how all that, again, comes together, but if there's a way that staff can help support, and I think Miguel was nice enough to come up and even share some ideas also on what can be done. If there's some combination there that could be done at a reasonable price point that would be well within your authority, then I would think that would be good direct. I think I'd like to see that plot happen. If it requires more because of whatever reason, then maybe then I would ask that it comes back with a staff recommendation and we move forward from there.
So maybe by the next meeting, it would be nice, maybe we could have a conversation about how we can make it happen. I can do some more research into what kind of wages these guys get paid, whether it hits the prevailing wage threshold or not, or whether it's.
Okay, so prevailing wage is
Is
any
any
public
time,
money
anytime.
in excess
Mhm.
of $1,000 as a cost incurred. So no matter what, it's gonna be public, with public money.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
I'm not sure. You asked me if this is a public work.
But-
That's a big question I have.
But the demo is a service, right? We're just a service, so they just have to comply with those wage or, okay. I get it.
Research on it, see how it works.
There may be a few ways to accomplish this, and I think if staff could have a little time to evaluate some methods for getting there, we might be able to achieve it in the near term. I
Very
would
good.
love to talk with our contractor who has an open contract with the city currently working at the site. There may be an opportunity.
To subcontract or something.
Correct.
Okay. I would love to see that.
Very well.
What about the lead study? Do we wanna wait on that, or is that something that we could possibly approve if it's only between $700 and
So,
maybe $1,000?
my only caution to council is we know our gap is very large in our general fund currently. We are in six-figure gap territory. Anything that is taking us outside of a normal expenditure, I know we don't have an approved budget, but just remember that six-figure gap continues to grow, and the ability to reduce, we're not at the point of talking where the reductions are finally going to land. So when we're looking at the Parks and Rec options, remember, we're still battling the
Yeah.
topic of what
No,
are we
I
doing
agree.
with the pool?
Right.
The heaters that are non-functioning, the
Yeah.
features that are maybe not urgent today because the sun is out and we're not worried about it. But they're going to be right at our back door here shortly, and the most pressing issues, the hard part, will be prioritizing and hearing from council, what are the things you're willing to see change significantly, i.e. a reduction in service level, and what are the things that are sacred territory that there's no desire to change, so.
Okay.
And some work has been done at the park with respect to painting over and things
Yes,
like
we
that.
did.
I don't know if it's
Right.
necessarily a priority right now, so. And again, I still would echo the same sentiment, like, let's wait till we get to that budget process, approve it, because I know there's gonna be a large gap that we have to fill, and there's certainly greater priorities, I think, right now. But I do like the concept with respect to, the greener grass. I think that can be a big improvement. So if you wouldn't mind, if we can maybe evaluate that first, and then revisit the other
Sure.
topic in the near future.
Okay.
Yep.
That was the
Perfect.
council issue.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you for your presentation. All right. So, next item on the agenda is departmental reports, review of Brawley Municipal Code sections for parking and storage of boats, RVs, and trailers by Development Services Director Gordon Gast. Backup materials on pages 81, 82. This is a review, continuation of discussion from our last meeting. Mr. Gordon Gast?
Good evening, once again, Mr. Mayor, council members, Gordon Gast, Development Services Director. I wasn't present at the last meeting, but I did watch the meeting. And I think what I'd like to focus your attention on first is on the second page, on page 82. The definition of front yard. I think there was a lot of confusion. What I saw, what people think a front yard is. A front yard is the area extending across the full width of the lot, the front yard. The rest of the stuff's basically saying it's from your property line to where your building setback is, from your side yard, this side to that side. No exception, if there's a driveway or a jacuzzi or a Statue of Liberty in your front yard, it's a front yard. Everything in that area is a front yard. So, going back, like I said, I'm gonna focus just on the chapter 27 areas, which is the zoning ordinance section, which relates to on the property. So when you go back to page 81, the first one, where it says boats, RVs, trailers, trailer coaches, shall not be stored or parked in any required front yard. Probably a couple of reasons for this. One, I'm sure it's an aesthetic reason. Probably started one time, that's usually the complaint we get when people do complain about it. Second reason is safety. You ever try pulling out of the driveway when there's an RV parked next to you, when you're pulling out and you can't see the kid on the bicycle coming? A car's a little easier, you can see through the windows, it's lower.
Sure.
So it's a safety issue too. So there's reasoning behind why we have this ordinance. And yes, there's property rights issues, but, as a neighboring property, I have property rights too, to enjoy my property without having to be interfered with when I'm pulling out of the driveway. So I think that's the reason why we have that,
Right.
that there.
We're gonna review all the, or
No, so some of the comments were with respect to, city ordinance and parking trailers on concrete driveways. And so with respect to trailers, is there a setback requirement if they're on a long driveway?
Yes, it's whatever your front yard setback is, which is primarily 20 feet, depending on the size of your lot. What you'll see in the older parts of town, they have bigger lots. They're 7,500 square feet. Usually the house is set back further, the driveways are longer, and you'll see, them park 20 feet from their property line. In the newer houses, where you have 6,000 square foot lots, usually the garage is basically where the setback is.
Right.
So anything in front of that is really, there's no room to put it. And side yards, those lots are usually 40 feet wide as opposed to 50, and you only have a 5-foot side yard setback, and some people, builders build all the way up to that setback line, so there's not even room to put a driveway. And of course, there's no alleys in newer areas.
Right.
It's kind of the disadvantage of the newer subdivisions. Now, what I've seen other cities do, in usually more upscale neighborhoods, you'll have a developer build a separate lot in the neighborhood that's run by an HOA, where they put an area that's lighted and where people park their RVs and toys and
Longer-term
boats and things
parking
like
there,
that. Right. And then, like I said, you're not interfering with safety issues or the aesthetic qualities of the neighborhood.
I don't think we have any in Brawley like that.
No, we don't have any in Brawley like that, but like I said, I've seen them in other places. It's, it's developer's choice and demand by the people that, that buy the houses.
All right. So I know we touched on the topic. It was several comments from members of the public. We were going to revisit this topic by getting some backup information from our planning director. And so is there any additional comments from council or any information we'd like to provide our city attorney? I know that there was an item that was going to be read. There was a second reading that we postponed. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, we
to that?
just need to take a look at that ordinance, probably reintroduce it and make sure it's compatible with the zoning ordinances or figure out what direction council wants to go on this before we bring that back to you.
Mr. Mayor, what do you, my thoughts on just reading the backup material, and I appreciate seeing all the codes kind of, put in one place. That's very helpful. I guess my issue would be one of logic, that understand if there is a safety or aesthetic issue, and we all understand that. Yet, when we didn't have code enforcement, pretty much, everyone that was doing it was doing it. So if there was a, uptick or spike in incursions or accidents or whatever, then I'm sure we would probably know about it, and I could be wrong, so I'm kind of throwing that out there.
It was basically complaint-driven, when
Right.
somebody had
So
an issue with that particular.
Putting that out there, and we certainly understand that, and I would hope that code, any code, including ours, would address that. But with that said, maybe the idea of having our city attorney explore what are some alternative municipal codes that are on the books with other jurisdictions that have some accommodation for property owners to, with a proper driveway or flat work. I know it's not referenced in here, but are there codes out there that reference that have an allowance for that? But I'm sure there's some specifications around that. Maybe age, movement of the it can't be an eyesore, all those kinds of things. So I'd be interested in at least seeing what some alternative codes would be that would be more accommodating.
That's something that we could easily do. I'm told City of El Centro has crossed this bridge, so let's see what they've done. Councilmember Couchman was handing out sample codes a couple of weeks ago.
Very well. And we did discuss it amongst council, and we were going to postpone the item too for action.
The direction that came out of the council meeting was a 90-day reprieve on enforcement. So for those who might be here this evening as a result of the courtesy notices that went out, no violations will be issued. And the additional direction was to delay the second reading until a future date, and that the council would hold some public discussions in the future that are widely advertised, so that people interested in the topic know that it's a subject on a future council, and it was requested that it occur after the summer season.
Yeah. So, no, certainly appreciate our Development Services Director, and I'm still getting used to your title, I'm sorry. Because I still keep calling you the
No, I
planning
am too.
director for so many years, you know,
You
it's
wear
like.
two hats.
Yeah. Well, no, he wears the Development Services Director hat now, but thank you. So thank you for putting that information before us, and the municipal code section especially, I think, is very important for us to understand.
Just a, a possibility for if, we go to allowing it under with certain restrictions.
Sure.
Maybe permission from the neighbors also.
Yeah, that's something. I mean,
People
we
Heaven
require
forbid
that.
you have to talk to your neighbor, but hey, you know
That-
what?
I know it, we require it now, and people don't follow it necessarily, but when you have
It's just a
4-H
common
animals.
courtesy.
Yeah, we
Just
actually
common
do
courtesy.
enforce.
Yeah, 4-H animals, as an
Right.
example,
Yeah,
you're
right.
supposed to ask
You require,
neighbor
the neighbors
permission.
to
Mhm.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Right,
so,
exactly.
very well. Well, thank you very much for the information.
Sure.
All right, and next is a departmental report. It's 5B, update on 4th of July 2018 and fireworks by Fire Chief Chuck Peraza and Police Chief Robert Sawyer. Backup materials on pages 83 to 85.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council, Chuck Peraza, Fire Chief. So this year, we did an increase of outreach to the public. We did utility billing inserts, which reached probably about 5,600 residents. We did message boards, which were located here in the plaza area. We did the Nixle system as well as the city website. It was information about the use of safe and sane and versus illegal use of fireworks. As far as the vendors for the safe and sane fireworks this year, we had a total of 6 applicants. One was ineligible, so it dropped us down into not having what we have in our municipal code as far as a lottery system. So we didn't have to have a lottery system for these organizations. Excuse me. The 5 organizations have been past vendors, and they are fully aware of the municipal code, their rights and use of their locations, and so on and so forth. So we were really comfortable with them. They complied to all our codes, and as far as 4th of July, went without a bang. So.
Okay, all right, that's good.
But there was yeah. Thank you. Rim shot.
Yeah.
As far as the illegal fireworks, yes, they were present, and Chief Sawyer will give you information on that as well. If there's any other questions for me, I'll be
No
more than happy
questions,
to answer.
thank you.
No
I'll tell you of an
injuries,
experience I had.
Yeah, no, there was no injuries. We didn't have any incidents regarding fireworks, whether safe and sane or illegal. So
Unsafe and
I
insane.
walked out my back door to throw out some garbage. This was walking out, I heard one go off. Boom. Believe it or not, the trash that was caused from the firework landed on me.
Really?
Yeah. So I threw out the trash, and then the next day, I look out near my front door, and there's pieces of fireworks that, if it goes up, it's going to come down somewhere.
Sure.
And it came down on me. So, yeah, I mean, it happens, and that's one thing that we want to prevent,
Yeah.
If I had a full head of hair, look what it would have happened, It would burn my hair off.
You had
What's
them
it?
right across
What
the
was it
street.
called?
I know, that's-
the drill and fill.
Then I would have had to drill and fill. I don't want to spend $5,000. But no, all joking aside, but it does happen. That's why people are upset. And then, we have a neighbor that was, they lost their, and I'm not sure if they've recovered their little.
No, they didn't.
Their little dog. Little dog got out, and that was it.
Yeah.
They've had that doggy for 8 years, and never came back.
It's unfortunate,
So,
but
yeah.
it's here and present, and like I said, Chief
Uh-huh.
Sawyer will, I know they increased their efforts this year,
Yeah.
and it made a difference this year. I believe that.
Thank you. I think we really do need to crack down on that, though. I mean, it's just people or their pets are either running away or dying, or, quite honestly, I mean, what if somebody were to be burned, or a building, property damage, or somebody hurt,
Yeah.
So It's not something that I want to see.
I know. I was telling my city manager, my dogs are hunting dogs, and they thought it was
Yeah, it was-
on all night long.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they wanted to go all night.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Sawyer?
Honorable Mayor and members of City Council, thank you for having me here tonight. Robert Sawyer, Police Chief. As Chief Peraza mentioned, we did step up our enforcement efforts in light of the public concerns related to fireworks here in the city of Brawley. During the week, or the time frame of July 2nd to July 6th, the police department responded to 70 complaints.
70?
70.
70 complaints.
70
Wow.
complaints that came in through the business lines. No doubt part and due to the increased efforts of the city to make people aware of the safe and sane efforts, the allotted times or the allowable times for the use of the fireworks. 60 of these calls came in on the 4th of July. In light of the concerns and the concerted effort put forth by the city to take some enforcement activities on the not so safe and certainly not sane fireworks that were being lit off by some of the members of our community, we deployed 4 additional officers between the peak hours of 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. that evening. I had the privilege of working alongside them that night and getting to see them in action, and then also some of the
fireworks shows?
Some of the fireworks shows and the community festivities that were taking place that evening. 51 of the 60 calls for service that night were handled by this particular detail, which consisted of officers in a vehicle and officers on bicycles. So collectively, we responded to about 60 calls that night. 9 were handled by the patrol teams, 51 by this particular detail that was put together. And then we had, again, 10 that fell outside of the 4th of July time frame that were handled by patrol. What we saw is the majority of these particular incidents occurred between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. So during the allowed times, however, certainly a large amount of the fireworks here in the city were not of the legal sort. Of these 70 calls, we had no way of tracking what mechanism was used or what device was used, whether they were safe and sane or they were illegal fireworks according to the code. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, as I'm sure all of you witnessed on the 4th, there was a number of projectiles shot in the air and things of that nature. As a result of the enforcement activities, 12 warning citations were issued, and 1 actual citation was issued to an individual where the officers actually physically saw him light off the firework in the street. So we did take as much of a no-tolerance stance on this as we could, but as previously discussed in some other council meetings, we're kind of handicapped on what we can do for enforcement purposes. So to the extent possible, we kind of tried to drive home the point that if you light these off, you're going to receive a citation, there's fines attached to it, and there's some consequences to those actions.
Thank you for that update. With respect to the person that was witnessed firing the fireworks off, what does that fine look like? It's a citation. What would that look like for them?
I'd have to defer. I believe that's in the city ordinance section. I'd have to defer to legal counsel on that.
If I recall, it's a $500 fine.
Okay.
If I remember.
So it's substantial. I mean,
It's a
it can-
substantial fine.
It's a substantial fine, yeah.
Yes.
So,
And once we made contact with the majority of people, they were cooperative. We didn't have any issues with it. Unfortunately, we did have 1 incident of property damage. We had a vehicle that had some burn marks as a result of what we believe to be an illegal firework that was lit off in the area.
Yeah.
No injuries reported, but there was some significant impact to the animal community as discussed.
yeah. No, and I had that experience myself. Had I not had it, I maybe wouldn't understand what people, but it fell on me and I felt it, and then I saw it the next day in front of my house. So, thank you for that update. Is there any questions from council? We appreciate the efforts that the Brawley PD had out that day, so thank you.
I'm just wondering if we can, for the ones that you interacted with, if it would be a good idea to maybe send notices to those addresses for New Year's or in the next 4th of July to let them know, remind them, a friendly reminder not to use unsafe and insane fireworks.
We can certainly make those efforts. Yes.
Well, I think, just getting the message out to the community, whether that's a press release or whatever it is, saying, hey, there were 70 calls, 61 of those were on 4th of July, and of those we cited, this many people, and this is what it would cost. I think that's a deterrent in itself as well. So if you can get that information out, I think it'd be very useful, just to get the message out to people that it is being looked at carefully.
Absolutely.
So,
Chief, just real quick, in the backup material with the statistics, I saw that, but you also mentioned you confiscated quite a bit, so I take it on these contacts, broader number, where there, obviously you didn't witness something happening, in some cases warnings, other cases maybe it wasn't even a written warning, but just aggregate, is there any kind of quantity? Was it a fairly large amount of that?
I could tell you in terms of size, it was about a full tabletop's worth of illegal fireworks.
That's a lot.
We didn't weigh it. We didn't really want to handle the whole
Yeah.
lot. We didn't want to have any injuries on our part, but it was a significant amount that was taken from the streets. And again, a lot of that was compliance through the community. We
Willingly,
asked-
yeah.
Exactly. We asked for them to turn over what they had in lieu of fines or reoccurring calls for service and,
Yeah.
and the expenditure of our resources and so forth. So the community was, for the most part, very cooperative with us. They were understanding, disappointed somewhat, but we explained that there's other ways and locations to utilize those type of fireworks, but certainly not within the city limits of Brawley.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Nava, Chief, if you might be willing, I know there was some information collected on the animal control element of the equation, which has been of interest to the council and community. Did you have any additional figures that you might be able to share tonight?
So yes, unfortunately, there was 18 animals that we believe, well, that were located and found to be deceased, we believe, as a result of the fireworks. So
Wow.
we cannot stress the
a lot.
importance of complying with the ordinances here in the city, because it not only has an effect on our lives and the property that we own, but on our pets as well.
Right.
It's a
And
very
then,
significant.
you know, the children that have their pets and they've had them for 10 years or 5 years. And, you know, I remember my father, you know, he's gonna be 89 this year, and he had a little dog that passed away, not from fireworks, just passed away, and I thought my dad was gonna die. I'm not kidding. I mean, he was distraught, you know, so I know people take that to heart, so.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely
Thank you.
affects all of us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
It's terrible.
I would love to see that fine increased from 500 to 1,000. That would have covered the overtime pay.
Yeah, no doubt.
One citation.
All right, so we'll go on to city council member reports. Councilmember Hamby, would you like to start?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. I had the opportunity to meet with the new chief of police, Chief Sawyer, and it was met for coffee and lunch. Well, actually, it turned into lunch. It was supposed to be breakfast, but it turned into lunch. And
Is that a brunch or not?
Yeah, no, it was.
It was lunch?
It was right about lunchtime. He had some other commitments that came up kind of last minute, so I don't hold that against him. But it was a really good learning opportunity to get to know him, learn more about his family and his background in El Centro, and I'm excited to see the work that he'll be able to do in the city of Brawley, and taking the knowledge that he's gained from working for El Centro for so many years and bringing it here. I know we have a phenomenal police department as it is, and I'm just really happy to see the addition of Chief Sawyer to enhance what we already have. Let's see. I had questions from concerned citizens about the progress of code enforcement in the downtown area, understanding that there's a lot of code enforcement happening, more so than some people want to see in certain areas. But and did you send out a report that has all of the code enforcement efforts? And then I think recently you sent some communication about some more recent efforts in downtown.
Right off of Plaza to the east, between 8th and Plaza. So trying to focus on a couple of key properties that have fallen into maybe a little bit of disrepair or neglect, and working with property owner representatives to get some movement on those.
Do we have an idea of how many, I don't know if you call them tickets or code enforcement attempts have been written in the downtown area?
I
don't know that yet.
There's all kinds of code enforcement activities that occur that might not only span like building facade related issues, it could be things like businesses operating without a business license, that becomes a code enforcement issue. There's numerous issues that we encounter in the downtown area relative to code enforcement.
Great. I've had people again, contact me about the dumpsters on North and South Plaza. Would love to see those put somewhere else, because they're an eyesore and a nose sore.
Can I stop you there for a second? Is there an option?
Would be happy to talk with you further offline, or if you
Sure,
want
go
to have
ahead.
it today, there.
No, go ahead. No, have the conversation with Councilmember Ham. But I would agree, if there's an opportunity to do something different, that might be a good thing, just considering options, so.
Great. Went to the Parks and Rec meeting earlier today. That was very informative, and I'm just really glad to see what all Parks and Rec is doing for our city, and the added enthusiasm from community members as seen in the amount of applications we got for the commission. I thought that was wonderful. I went to a film commission meeting last week, sort of an emergency meeting. And other than that, just enjoying the weather that we're having here, the hurricane force winds and thunder that I don't think I've ever heard here before.
Drill and fill weather?
Yeah,
There you go.
it sounded like, it woke me up because I thought lightning had struck somewhere near my house.
I was awake and I saw lightning strike, and it was like so bright. I thought it was
right
outside
here.
my door, man. That was crazy. Yeah.
So that's it for my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Kestner Howdy?
Okay, I didn't attend any events or anything these past couple of weeks. I did get some calls. Most of them are related to issues that we've been discussing. So I kind of reported on where we are as far as the council. Most of them in regards to, most of the folks that called me are people that do have trailers and haven't parked in their driveways, so they have some concerns about what kind of action we're gonna take. And then, I don't know if it's the same people or not, but I also got some calls regarding the code enforcement in the downtown. Maybe they're the ones that, received the warnings on their trailers, and they're wondering why the code enforcement officer, this is them talking, not me, why the code enforcement officer is focusing on them instead of on the downtown. So, and I explained to them that we're focusing on the whole city, we're not, and the reason that those were addressed were because of complaints, that we're not just out there looking for trailers that are parked in driveways. So those are some of the things that came up. And then one other thing that I had an opportunity to talk to Rosanna about a little bit, she sends me to training, so I have to bring stuff back, you know. I'm one of those that really pays attention to these things. But one of the seminars that I attended was in regards to finance. And like I discussed with Rosanna, and I realized that we've been having a lot of, with our personnel, you know, we've lost personnel and we've been replacing personnel, and so it's taken a while to get everybody back to doing all their duties. But one of the things that really stood out for me that I think would be really, really helpful for our council is a report that actually the presenter at the finance workshop says that she does for her city, and she provided me with samples, is a monthly year-to-date revenue and expense summary. And it covers pretty much everything that we would need to know on a monthly basis as far as general fund, where we are year-to-date, month-to-date, and what our revenues are, what our expenses are, what percentage we're at, you know, year-to-date. So I just thought that would be a really, really good addition to our reporting. That way our council is always abreast of where we are. We don't have to be asking, I mean, we're still gonna ask questions, but we can specify a little bit more if we see something that's an outlier or something. And also, for transparency reasons, you know, it's just a good thing to have. So I did share the material with Rosanna, and I think it's something that would be good for our whole council. We do get a report on a monthly basis, just for the information of the audience. We do receive a accounts payable report at every month of what goes out every month. But this would actually tell us year-to-date where we are in each particular category, such as the general fund, sewer and water, capital projects, and so forth. So if our council is interested in something like this, it would be a concise report, not a very lengthy report. It shouldn't take a long time to prepare, but I think it would be well worth our while to have that report prepared for us. So,
I'm not an accountant, but are there issues with our form of accounting, accrual cash, in terms of what you're gonna look at? So if you look at a monthly, you're gonna have a lot of skewed numbers.
yes,
so,
I realize
yeah.
that, and basically she covered a lot of that information, but there are some categories that will be true. But I think once we get an explanation on that, then we'll know that that's the reason, as like property taxes and things like that. But I think some of the others, like sewer and water and capital projects, I think they would give us a better picture of where we are on a monthly basis.
Just as
I don't know. Interesting.
to piggyback on your statement, I shared with Councilmember Kastner-Howdigi a copy of what we internally circulate for all funds, for revenues and expenditures when all the postings are done for a given month. It's a lot of detail. The example, which I believe was the city of Morgan Hill that
Right.
was provided, it would be basically taking those bottom line balances by fund and just showing you, it's a dashboard. And I have not had an opportunity to talk with our finance director
Right,
about it
right.
yet.
I realize that.
But it's very, very high level summary information. It's not necessarily weeds. And we talked a little bit about what those normal reports are. Obviously, the check registers come to council, and then you see them by cost center. They're organized in that fashion. You get a mid-year budget review, and then it's all based on projections for the next budget year. So
Yeah.
this would be maybe a quarterly report or something that might.
Well, quarterly would be good. I mean, she prepares a monthly report, and I just thought, we would always know where we are. And I just felt that was good information for us and for
think
making decisions.
Expenses, I
pretty
think,
much.
is probably much more accurate with respect to that. We know, and we can gauge it, but with revenues, it's just difficult with, because you do have, some accounts that don't register right away, and there's delays, but, yeah. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Mayor Pro Tem Wharton?
Mr. Mayor, just a couple of meetings, met with the principals of IVDRC, actually earlier. Hadn't had the opportunity to do that, but I did do that and visit at their location. That's the Imperial Valley Drug and Rehab Clinic, located here in Brawley. Also met with, had some conversations with a developer that's already engaged with the city and looking to meet again potentially this week. So this is a developer that was interested in one of the kind of stagnant subdivisions and again, looking to bring that to life. So
Took place with our staff Thursday or Friday. Was that Thursday?
not
or
very
Friday?
long ago?
Yes,
Okay.
it might have been Friday.
Okay.
With
Super.
Guillermo and
I'll
Glenn.
have super. I might follow up there. So at this point, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have to report.
Thank you. All right, did meet with ICTC. We had a strategic meeting, and I'm going to bring some more information back to the city council and actually present some of what was discussed and some of the objectives that have been reached by ICTC. Excuse me, ICTC, IVDC. And so I'll bring that back for everybody. Also, attended Sylvia's Little Treasures, their re-grand opening. That was well attended, nice improvement. They've been in business here in the city of Brawley for about 4 years, and they've had multiple expansions, and now they're occupying a location that's next to Inferno here in Brawley. And so there seems to be a demand for, the type of product that she's offering. I've seen other stores in Imperial County offering many of those items, or similar items, I should say, because many are unique and have been restored. But apparently there's a great demand for them. So I wish her well. And in fact, I saw some things there that I may end up picking up as well. So that, and then I did take a tour along with IVDC, the Port of San Diego. Did a very brief tour out there. We had a meeting in San Diego on several items that they're working on. But it's just impressive. It's not a large port, but Dole is placed out there, and they import a tremendous amount of bananas and other items, and so there's a lot of activity out there. And there may be in the very near future and or in the near future, some opportunity in working with the port and maybe storing some things in cold storage here in Imperial County. So that would be really, really exciting for us because there's a lot of activity, a lot of carts, and a lot of cargo that comes from it. So that would be a good thing. And I'll update the public at a later time, and I'll update council, but I'm working on some things within my own business, and I'll provide an update in the future. So, and that's it for now, but thank you all very much. We'll move on. City Manager's report.
Nothing further to report. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney.
Just some good news at 1147 D Street, the derelict house there. The court approved the receiver's plan to market that house and sell it to someone who's willing to rehab it under court supervision. So, and there's at least one buyer that's anxious to get it, so expect things to happen.
Fantastic. Anything else?
Nope.
Our City Clerk. All right, thank you. And our Supervisor District 4, former mayor, council members, Mr. Ryan Kelly, he's got his notes on his hand. He'd like to report.
Ryan Kelly, 448 Russell Road.
He comes as a citizen today, no?
Yes. That too.
That too. All right.
Right, I wanted to give you an update on a few things. The local health authority for Chief Sawyer, that a RFP has been issued for 5150 in Imperial County to look at best practices and action items to take on improving the status of handling 5150s, their medical discharge, their jailing, the medical clearance issue. So should have an impact. There's also some good news coming in on clinical psychiatric care that's going to be coming out later this summer. So good front on being able to keep your officers in Brawley. On the elections, today the board had a discussion about creating a committee to make improvements on the elections in the way that information is shared during the election, the amount of updates, expectations for the public, and when changes or significant a recount is requested. Those type of things should be shared across the spectrum. Everyone should know what the status is. And so that and electronic posting, as you all know, that the forms you have to fill out and give to the election official. Improvements on making that available for the public and for everyone. If you have a 24-hour notice of reporting a $1,000 donation, you should be able to get it online and not have to come in and pay 10 cents a copy. So updating and getting into. So there is a group, and we decided to create this committee, 16 members, and we said 7 cities would be represented. Rusty Garcia was there, so he spoke up and wanted to be Brawley's representative. And since he was there, we gave it to him. But if you want to attend, we'll make an allowance. Also 5 community members, 1 county elected official, not a board supervisor, the election officer, and the PIO for the county. And so those recommendations will come back, and it'll be, everything is being done by statute of what's required by the elections office. But these are improvements that we can make so that the public and improve voter turnout as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Greater accessibility.
There's an announcement, it should be in the paper soon, but we were awarded $6.5 million, $5 million for a new fire station in Nyland.
That's great.
It's got a cooling center, so that's how we got it. But
Yeah. Really?
it's
Is
also
that
going to have
really?
a sheriff's substation, and
Is
so
that
it'll
how,
be,
really?
Yeah,
Because of the, yeah, interesting.
that's how Esperanza
Yeah?
writes them.
Yeah. That's amazing.
The other 1.5 million is for water line replacements in Sealy. So something, I went to the National Association of Counties last week. Something I learned is something that we should all practice is opportunities that present themselves. Nashville had a tornado that went right through their downtown. They got flooded out, and not much of a difference in the demographics, Nashville, Franklin County, Imperial County. What the difference is that from those two disasters, they took every opportunity they could to get onto the federal dole and take those improvement monies into their community. 2010 earthquake, I remember those responses. We'll take care of it ourselves. We kind of pushed back at FEMA and federal assistance, Filner coming through, Schwarzenegger coming through. It was kind of, we'll take care of it. I mean, we did take some, but we could have taken more. And the earthquake swarm of 2012,
Yeah.
I mentioned it to Tim Kelly this morning. HCD offered to a low interest loan for the Brawley Theater. That was an opportunity that was missed. That place could be occupied right now. So just a sample. There's cranes all over the place in this town, and it's just booming. It's also the second best destination for bachelorette parties. Just in case you want to know.
What about
And I
for
saw it. I was telling Lloyd and Alma about this. There are gangs of dozen girls all over that town, and they are just, you got to get out of the way.
Yeah. What about for drill and fill? Do they have destination for that now?
Happy with top 10.
So one other item is, a few years ago, I brought up the idea about putting a water slide out at Weast Lake. We're going to bring it back, figure out how we can do some water improvement, water quality there.
Cool.
And make it a destination
That's
for kids
great.
in the summertime.
Awesome.
And then the item, so I hear you're going to be dark until Labor Day or after Labor Day?
We don't have regularly scheduled meetings, but I think we probably could have a meeting in July and August, depending on the council's availability and some potential change order opportunities tied to the senior center or Hinojosa.
If it's possible, during something before Labor Day, the legislature will come back the first part of August, and that time frame for being able to hear 893 or get that language included into SB 100 is going to be in August. And so any position that the city takes has to be in at that time so that the committees or the appropriations will be able to see it. It is probably, if SB 100 is approved in the way it is presented today without geothermal carve-out and regionalization of taking power from wind in Wyoming and other, maybe even dirty fuels, coal even coming in, it'll not, geothermal in Imperial Valley will not be able to thrive. There has to be a position for geothermal in California's creation, and this is the only vehicle. If they go forward in the path that they're at, in 100% renewable and regionalization, we're not going to see the power for power's sake. Maybe we'll see power for minerals' sake, but we won't see power for power's sake. So I just wanted to share that with you, and that's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm glad you
Supervisor
used-
Kelly?
You can get a lot on that
He's got,
one
he's got
hand.
big hands. He can put a lot of notes on there, you know what I mean?
Boy.
So, thank you very much. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then come back into closed session. Thank you all very much.